His father's family name being Pirrip, and his Christian name Philip, his infant tongue could make of both names nothing longer or more explicit than Pip.
So I called myself Pip, and came to be called Pip. I give Pirrip as my father's family name on the authority of his tombstone, and my sister, Mrs. Joe Gargery, who married the blacksmith. As I never saw my father or my mother, my first fancies regarding what they were like were derived from their tombstones.
At such a time, we found out for certain that this bleak place, overgrown with nettles, was the churchyard. And that Philip Pirrip, late of this parish, and also Georgiana, wife of the above, were dead and buried.
And that Alexander, Bartholomew, Abraham, Tobias, and Roger, infant children of the aforesaid 5 little stone lozenges, each about 1.5 feet long, were sacred to the memory of 5 little brothers.
And had also given up trying to get a living exceedingly early in this universal struggle.
My first, most vivid and broad impression of the identity of things seems to me to have been gained on a memorable, raw afternoon towards evening. It was Christmas Eve, and I was in my 7th year.
Hold your nose! Keep still, you little devil, or I'll cut your throat!
Oh, don't cut my throat, sir! Pray don't do it, sir!
Tell us your name, quick!
Oh, Pip, sir!
Once more, give it now!
Pip, sir!
Show us where you live, point out the place. You young dog, what fat cheeks you got. Darn me if I couldn't eat 'em, and if I hadn't half a mind to it.
I earnestly expressed my hopes that he wouldn't.
Now look at here, where's your mother?
There, sir!
Where?
There, sir! Also Georgiana, that's my mother.
Oh, and is that your father? Or longer your mother?
Yes, sir. Him too, light of this parish.
Who do you live with? Supposing you're kindly let to live, which I haven't made up my mind about.
My sister, sir. Mrs. Joe Gargery, wife of Joe Gargery, the blacksmith, sir.
Blacksmith, eh? Now looky here, the question being whether you're to be let to live. You know what a fire is.
Yes, sir.
And you know what victuals is.
Yes, sir.
You get me a fire, and you get me victuals. Bring them both to me, or I'll have your heart and liver out. Attend.
If you would kindly please let me keep upright, sir. Perhaps I shouldn't be sick, and perhaps I could attend more.
You get me that fire and them victuals. You do it, and you shall be let to live. You fail, and your heart and liver shall be tore out and roasted and ate. Now, I ain't alone. There's a young man hid with me, in comparison with which young man I am an angel. That young man has a peculiar way to himself, and of getting at a boy, and at his heart, and at his liver. A boy may lock his door, may be warm in bed, may tuck himself up, may draw the clothes over his head, may think himself comfortable and safe, but that young man will slowly creep and tear him open. Now I'm keeping that young man from harming you at the present moment with great difficulty. Now what do you say?
I said that I would get him the file.
Now you remember what you've undertook, and you remember that young man, and you get home.
Good night, sir. And I set my face towards home and made the best use of my legs.
Pip's sister, Mrs. Joe Gargery, the blacksmith, was more than 20 years older than he, and had established a great reputation for herself because she had brought him up by hand, having had time to learn for himself what the expression meant, and knowing her to have a hard and heavy hand, and to be much in the habit of laying it upon her husband as well as upon him. Pip supposed that Joe Gargery and he were both brought up by hand. Pip!
Joe! Pip! Pip, Mrs. Joe's been out a dozen times looking for you, Pip. She's out now, getting in a baker's dozen.
Oh, is she?
And what's worse, she's got Tickler with her.
Tickler was a wax-ended piece of cane, worn smooth by collision with my tickled frame.
She got down, and she got up, and she made a grab for Tickler, and she rampaged out. That's what she done. She rampaged out, Pip. Ah, she's a-comin'.
Where have you been, you young monkey? You tell me directly what you've been doing to wear me away with threat and fright and worry.
I have only been to the churchyard.
The churchyard. If it weren't for me, you'd have been in the churchyard long ago and stayed there. Who brought you up by hand?
You did.
And why did I do it? I should like to know.
I don't know.
I don't. I'd never do it again, I know that. It's bad enough to be a blacksmith's wife and him a guardry without being your mother.
Hark! Was that the great guns, Joe?
There's another convict off.
What does that mean, Joe?
Escape! Escape!
What's that?
There was a convict off the Hawks after sunset gun. They fired warning of him. It appears they're firing warning of another.
What are hulks?
I'll tell you, young fellow. I didn't bring you up by hand for you to badger people's lives out. People are put in hulks because they murder, and because they rob and forge, and do all sorts of bad. And they always begin by asking questions. Now, you get along to bed.
I have often thought that few people know what secrecy there is in the young under terror. No matter how unreasonable the terror, it is terror.
I was in mortal terror of the young man who wanted my heart and liver. I was in mortal terror of myself, from whom an awful promise had been extracted. I had no hope of deliverance through my all-powerful sister who repulsed me at every turn. I am afraid to think of what I did in the secrecy of my terror.
Pip got up and went downstairs, every board along the way and every crack in every board calling after her. Stop, thief! Get up, Mrs. Jones!
I had no time to spare. I stole. I got a file from among Joe's tools, some bread, some brandy, and a beautiful, round, compact pork pie.
A boy with somebody else's pork pie! They opened the door, shut it, and ran for the Misty Marshals.
I dare say I felt a pain in my liver if I had known where it was.
You're not a deceiving imp. You brought no one with you.
No, sir, no.
Well, I believe you. You'd be but a fierce young hound indeed, if at your time of life you could help hunt a wretched varmint. Hunting as near death and dunghill as this wretched varmint is.
I am glad you enjoy it.
Thank ye, my boy, I do.
I'm afraid you won't leave any of it for him.
Leave any for him? Who's him?
The young man.
Oh!
That was hidden to you.
Yes, him. No. He don't want no victuals.
I thought he looked as if he did.
Looked? When?
Just now.
Where?
There.
But this young man, did you notice anything in him?
He had a badly bruised face.
Not here, huh?
Yes, there.
Show me where he went. Point out the place. I'll pull him up like a bloodhound. Curse thee, fire!
The last I heard of him, I stopped in the mist to listen, and the fire was still going.
Where have you been?
Was Mrs. Joe's Christmas salutation when Pip and his conscience showed themselves.
I had been down to hear the carols.
Well, you might have done worse.
Not a word of the robbery yet.
Perhaps if I weren't a blacksmith's wife, and what's the same, a slave with her apron never off, I'd have been down to hear the carols. I'm rather partial to carols myself, which is the best reason for my never hearing any.
And still no word of the robbery.
They were to have a superb Christmas dinner, and Uncle Pumblechook was coming. Mrs. Joe, I brought you the compliments of the season.
Uncle Pumblechook, this is kind.
May I remark that I consider the subject of today's homily ill-chosen, which was the less excusable when there are so many subjects going about. A man needn't go far to find a subject if he's ready with his soapbox. Look at Porkalo, there's a subject. Many a moral for the young may be deduced from that text.
And still no word of the robbery.
You listen to this.
Swine! Swine were the companions of the prodigal. The gluttony of swine is put before us as an example to the young. What might be detestable in a pig is even more detestable in a boy. Besides, think what you have to be grateful for. Especially be grateful unto them which brought you up by hand. If you'd been born a squeaker...
Oh, he was, if ever a child was.
But I mean a four-footed squeaker. If you'd been born such, would you have been here now? No. You would have been disposed of for so many shilling, according to the market price of the article. And Dunstable the butcher would have come up to you as you lay in your straw, and he would have shed your blood and had your life. No bringing up by hand then. Not a bit of it. Yet pork, regarded as boiled, is rich too, ain't it?
You must taste, to finish with, a most delightful and delicious present of Uncle Pumblechook's. You must know it's a pie.
Must they? Oh, let them hope not to taste it.
A savory pork pie.
Oh! And I ran for my life.
Straight into the arms of the law. Here you are, look sharp, come on. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but as I have mentioned at the door to this smart young shaver, I want a chase in the name of the king, and I want the blacksmith.
Pray tell what you might want with him.
Mrs., speaking for myself, I should reply, the honor and pleasure of his fine wife's acquaintance. Speaking for the king, I answer, a little job done. We have had an accident with these and want the blacksmith.
I began to perceive that the handcuffs were not for me, and that the military had so far got the better of the pie as to put it in the background.
I took him! I'll give him up mine back!
Notice God, he tried to murder me.
Try and not do it! I took him and give him up, that's what I done. I not only prevented him from getting off the marshes, but I dragged him back. He's a gentleman, if you please, this convict, as well as a villain. Tried to murder him when I could do worse and drag him back. I wish to say something. Respecting this escape, this is another point, a separate matter. A man can't starve, at least I can't. I took some victuals up at the village over yonder.
You mean starve?
And I'll tell you where from. From the blacksmith's. It was some broken victuals, that's what it was, and a dram of liquor, and a pie.
Have you happened to miss such an article as a pie, Mrs.?
I did, the very moment you came in.
Then I'm sorry to say that I've ate your pie.
And so Pip's convict is taken away from the other, and Pip's story goes on. When he was old enough, he had to look to his studies. He struggled through the alphabet as if it had been a bramble bush, getting considerably worried and scratched by every letter. I say, Pip, what a scholar you are, ain't you?
I loved Joe, perhaps for no better reason in those early days than because the dear fellow let me love him, and I wanted no better reward than to be with him in the forge. How do you spell Gargery, Joe?
I don't spell it at all.
But supposing you did?
It can't be supposed.
Why didn't you ever go to school, Joe, when you were as little as me?
Well, Pip, I'll tell you. My father, Pip, were given to drink. And when he were overtook with drink, he hammered away at my mother most unmerciful. That was almost the only hammering he ever did, excepting at myself. And he hammered away at me with a vigor, only to be equaled by the vigor with which he didn't hammer at his anvil. You're listening and understanding, Pip.
Oh, yes, Joe.
Consequence, my mother and me ran away from my father several times. But he was that good in his heart that he couldn't bear to be without us. So he come with a most tremendous crowd and make such a row at the doors of the houses of where we was that they were obligated to have no more to do with us and to give us up to him. And he took us home and hammered us. What'd you see, Pip? Well, I dropped back on my learning.
Certainly, poor Joe.
But mind you, Pip, my father was that good in his heart, don't you see? Well, somebody's got to keep the pot boiling, Pip, or the pot won't boil, don't you know? Consequence, my father made no objections of my going to work. So I went to work.
to work in my present calling, which were his too, if he would have followed it. And I worked terribly hard, I assure you, Pip. And in time I was able to keep him. And I kept him until he went off on a purple-leptic fit. It was always my intentions to have it put upon his tombstone, whatsoever the failings on his part, remember, reader, he was that good in his heart.
Did you make that phrase yourself?
I made it myself. I made it in a moment. It was like striking out a horseshoe complete in a single blow. My mother, she wasn't a long and following, poor soul, and her share of peace finally come round at last. It was but lonesome then living here alone. That's when I got acquainted with your sister. Now, Pip, your sister is a fine figure of a woman. Whatsoever the family's opinions, or whatever the world's opinions on that subject may be, your sister is a fine figure of a woman.
I'm glad you think so, Joe.
So am I. I'm glad I think so. Well, a little redness or a little matter of bone here or there, well, what does it signify to me?
If it doesn't signify to you, to whom does it signify?
Certainly. That's it. You're right, old chap. Oh, and as for you, if you could have been aware of how small and flabby and mean you was, dear me, you would have formed the most contemptible opinion of yourself.
Never mind me, Joe.
Well, I did mind you. When I offered to your sister to keep company and to be asked in church at such times as she was willing and ready to come to the forge, I says to your sister, and bring the poor little child. God bless the poor little child, I says to her. There's room for him at the forge. Ever the best of friends, ain't us, Pip? God bless you, old chap. Oh, don't cry. I don't deny that your sister do come the mogul over us now and again. And I don't deny that she do throw us backfalls and drop down heavy upon us. And at such times as when your sister is on the rampage, candor compels her to admit that she is a buster.
Joe pronounced this word as if it began with at least 12 capital B's.
A last of all, Pip. And this I want to say to you very seriously. I see so much in my poor mother of a woman, drudging and slaving and breaking her honest heart, and never getting no peace in her mortal days, that I'm dead afeard of going wrong in the way of not doing what's right by a woman. That I'd for rather the other two go wrong the other way. It'd be a little ill-convenience to myself. I wish it was only me that got put out, Pip. I wish there weren't no old tickler for the old chap. I wish I could take it all my own self. But this is the up and down and straight on it, Pip. And I hope you can overlook shortcomings.
Young as I was, I believed that I dated a new admiration of Joe from that night on. We were equals afterwards, as we had been before, but I had a new sensation of feeling conscious that I was looking up to Joe in my heart.
No! If this boy ain't grateful this night, he never will be. I only hope he won't be hammered, but I have my fears.
She ain't that line, Mum. She knows better.
She?
Well, what you're staring at is the house afire.
Which some individual mentioned she.
And she is a she. Unless you call Miss Avisham a E, which I doubt even you would go so far as that.
Miss Avisham uptown?
Is there a Miss Avisham downtown? She wants this boy to go play there. And of course he's a-going, and he'd had better play there, or I'll work him.
You must have heard of Miss Havisham uptown. Everybody for miles round had heard of Miss Havisham uptown as an immensely rich and grim lady who lived in a large and dismal house, barricaded against robbers, and who led a life of seclusion.
Well, to be sure. I wonder how she come to know Pip.
Noodle! Who said she knew him?
With some individual Pip mentioned she wanted him to go and play there.
And couldn't she ask Uncle Pumblechook if he happened to know a boy who could play there? And couldn't Uncle Pumblechook, always being thoughtful and considerate for us, though you might not think so, Joseph, couldn't he tell her about this boy standing, prancing here that I've always been a willing slave to?
And with that, she pounced upon Pip as an eagle on a lamb, and his face was squeezed into wooden bowls and sinks, and his head was put under taps of water butts, and he was soaped and kneaded and toweled and thumped and harrowed and rasped.
I may here remark that I suppose myself to be better acquainted than any living authority with the rigid effect of a wedding ring, passing unsympathetically over the human countenance.
Boy, be forever grateful unto all friends, but especially unto them which brought you up by hand.
Goodbye, Joe.
God bless you, Pip, old chap.
I had never parted from him before, and what with my feelings and what with the soap suds, I could not at first see why on earth I was going to play at Miss Havisham's, and what on earth I was expected to play at.
So they travelled to the manor house, where they were greeted by a child. A light in years, but nothing in manner. Came unattached to the bed.
We saw that.
Let's see what happens. Deal.
What name?
Pumblechook,
Quite right.
this is Pip.
This is Pip, is it? Come in, Pip. Oh, did you wish to meet Miss Havisham?
If Miss Havisham wished to meet me,
Ah, but you see she don't.
Come into the manor house, boy.
Is that the name of this house, miss?
One of its names, boy.
It has more than one then, miss.
One more. Its other name is Satis, which is Latin or Greek or Hebrew or all three. Or all one to me for enough.
Enough House. That's a curious name, miss.
Yes, but it meant more than it said. It meant when it was given that whoever had this house could want nothing else. They must have been easily satisfied in those days, I should think. But don't loiter, boy. Go in.
Who is it?
Pip, ma'am.
Pip.
Mr. Pumblechook's boy, ma'am. Come to play.
Come nearer. Let me look at you. Come close.
If you took note of the surrounding objects in detail, you saw that her watch had stopped at 20 minutes to 9, and that a clock in the room had stopped at 20 minutes to 9.
Look at me. Are you not afraid of a woman who has never seen the sun since you were born?
I regret to state that Pip was not afraid of telling the enormous lie.
No.
You know what I touch.
Yes, ma'am.
What do I touch?
Your heart.
Broken. I am tired. I want diversion, and I am done with men and women. Play. I sometimes have sick fancies, and I have a sick fancy now that I want to see some play. There. Play. Are you sullen and obstinate?
No, ma'am. I am very sorry for you, and very sorry I can't play just now. If you complain of me, I shall get into trouble with my sister. So I would do it if I could, but it's so new here, and so strange, and so fine, and melancholy.
So new to you, so old to me, so strange to you, so familiar to me, so melancholy for both of us. Estella, let me see you play cards with this boy.
With this boy? Why, he's a common labouring boy.
Well, you can break his heart.
What do you play, boy?
Nothing but beggar my neighbour, miss.
Beggar him.
So she stood, corpse-like, as they played at cards, the frillings and trimmings on her bridal dress looking like earthy paper. Discoveries are occasionally made of bodies buried in ancient times, which fall to powder in the moment of being distinctly seen. She looked as if the admission of the natural light of day would have struck her to dust.
He calls knaves jacks, this boy, and what coarse hands he has, and what thick boots.
You say nothing of her. She says many hard things of you, but you say nothing of her. What do you think of her?
And the tears were hot upon his cheeks.
I don't like to say.
Tell me in my ear.
I think she was very proud.
Anything else?
I think she's very pretty.
Anything else?
I think she's very insulting.
Anything else?
I think I should like to go home.
And never see her again, even though she's so pretty.
I'm not sure that I should like to see her again, but I should like to go home now.
When shall I have you here again? Let me think. I know nothing of the days of the week. I know nothing of the weeks of the year. Come again after 6 days.
Why don't you cry?
Because I don't want to.
You do. You've been crying till you are half blind, and you are near crying again now. "6 days.
Well, boy, how did you get on uptown?
Pretty well, sir.
Pretty well? Pretty well is no answer. Tell us what you mean by pretty well.
I reflected for some time and then answered as if I'd discovered a new idea. I mean, pretty well, sir.
Boy, what like is Miss Havisham?
Very short and dark.
What was she doing when you went there today?
She was sitting in a black velvet coach.
In a black velvet coach?
Yes. And Mrs. Stella, that's her niece, I think, handed her in cake and wine at the coach window on a gold plate. And we all had cake and wine on gold plates. And I got up behind the coach to eat mine because she told me to. I beg to observe that I think of myself with amazement when I recall the lies I told on this occasion. And we played with flags.
Flags?
Yes! Estella waved the blue flag and I waved the red one. And Miss Havisham waved one sprinkled all over with little gold stars. And then we all waved our swords and hurrahed.
Was anyone else there?
4 dogs.
Large or small?
Immense. And they all fought for a few cutlets out of a silver basket.
Oh, where was this coach? Name of gracious.
In Miss Havisham's room, but there weren't any horses to it.
Oh, can this be possible? Oh,
I'll tell you, Mum, it's my opinion. It's a sedan chair. She's flighty, you know. Very flighty enough to pass the days. It's a sedan chair.
Before the fire goes out, Joe, I should like to tell you something.
Should you, Pip? Then tell us, what is it, Pip?
Joe, you remember all that about Miss Havisham's?
Remember? I believe you. Wonderful.
It's a terrible thing, Joe. It ain't true.
What are you telling of? Why, you don't mean to say it's...
Yes, I do, Joe. It's lies.
But not all of it. Well, why, sure you don't mean to say, Pip, that there wasn't no black velvet coach. But at least there were dogs, Pip.
No, Joe.
A dog? A puppy? Come.
It's terrible, Joe, ain't it?
Terrible, awful, what possessed you?
I don't know what possessed me, Joe. But I wish you hadn't taught me to call knaves at cards jacks. And I wish my boots weren't so thick, nor my hands so coarse. There was a young, beautiful lady at Miss Havisham's who was dreadfully proud, and she said I was common, And I know I am common, and I wish I was not common.
There's one thing to be sure of, Pip. And namely, lies is lies. Don't tell no more of them. That ain't no way to get out of being common. Now looky here, old chap. The word is said to you by a true friend. If you can't get to be uncommon through going straight, you'll never get to do it through going crooked. So don't tell no more of them. And live well. And die happy.
You are not angry with me, Joe?
No, old chap.
I did not forget Joe's recommendation, and yet I thought long after I laid me down, how common Estella would consider Joe, a mere blacksmith, how thick his boots and how coarse his hands. That was a memorable day to me, for it made great changes in me.
But it's the same with any life. Imagine one selected day struck out of it, and think how different its course might have been. Think for a moment of the chain of iron or gold, of thorn or flowers, that never would have bound you, but for the formation of the first link on one memorable day. At the appointed time, Pip returned to Miss Havisham's, and his hesitating ring at the gate brought out Stella.
Well, miss?
Am I pretty?
Yes, I think you're very pretty.
Am I insulting?
Not so much so as you were last time.
Not so much so.
No.
Now, you little coarse monster, what do you think of me now?
I shall not tell you.
Why don't you cry again, you little wretch?
Because I'll never cry for you again.
Which was, I suppose, as false a declaration as ever was made.
Whom have we here?
A boy.
Boy of the neighborhood, eh?
Yes, sir.
How do you come here?
Miss Havisham sent for me, sir.
Well, behave yourself. I've a pretty large experience of boys, and you're bad little fellows.
So, the days have worn away, have they? This is where I shall be laid when I am dead. They shall come and look at me here. This is my birthday, Pip.
I was going to wish her many happy returns.
I don't suffer it to be spoken of. I don't suffer those who are here just now or anyone else to speak of it. They come on this day, but they dare not refer to it.
Of course, I made no further effort to refer to it.
When the ruin is complete, and I am laid dead in my bridal dress, which shall be the finished curse upon him. So much the better, if it happened on this day. Come again, after a time.
A day was appointed for his return, and he was left to wander about the grounds as he liked, where he encountered a pale young gentleman, again like Pip in age, but nothing in manner. Hello, young fellow!
Hello. Who let you in? Miss Estella?
Who gave you leave to prowl about?
Miss Estella?
Come and fight. Stop a moment, though. I ought to give you a reason for fighting, too. Regular rules, laws of the game. That means you have won.
Can I help you?
No, thank you. Good afternoon.
Same to you.
Come here. You may kiss me if you like.
And the days and months and years went round for his returning to this scene of violence. Well, Pip, you are growing tall. Tell me the name again of that blacksmith of yours.
Joe Gargery, ma'am.
You must be apprenticed to him at once. There are 25 guineas in this bag. Give it to your master. Goodbye, Pip.
Am I to come again, Miss Havisham?
No, Pip. Godfrey is your master now.
I remember that when I got into my little bedroom, I was truly wretched and had a strong conviction on me that I should never like Joe's trade. I had liked it once, but once was not now. Now it was all coarse and common, and I would not have had Miss Havisham or Estella see it on any account. The change was made in me. The thing was done. Well or ill done, excusably or inexcusably, it was done. But, Joe...
Yes, old chap.
Here am I, getting on in the first year of my time, and since the day of my being bound your apprentice, I have never once thanked Miss Havisham, or asked after her, or shown that I remember her. And as we are rather slack just now, if you would give me a half-holiday, I think I would go uptown and make a call upon Mrs. Havisham.
Which name ain't Mrs. Havisham? She's been rechristened.
I know, Joe, I know. It was a slip of mine. What do you think of it, Joe?
Now, Joe kept a journeyman at weekly wages whose name was Orlick. He never seemed to come to his work on purpose, but would slouch in as if by mere accident. And when he went to the Jolly Bargeman to eat his dinner or went away at night, he would slouch out as if he had no idea of where he was going, no intention of ever coming back. This morose journeyman had no liking for Pip. Once, when Pip was very small and timid, he told Pip, "Understand that the devil lives in a black corner of the forge, and that I knows the fiend very well. Also, that it is necessary to make up the fire once in 7 years with a live boy, and that you may consider yourself fuel." "Now, master, sure you're not going to favour only one of us? Young Pip has half holiday, do as much for old Orlick."
Why? What do you do with a half holiday if you do get it?
What'll I do with it? What'll he do with it? I'll do as much with it as him.
As to Pip, he's going up in town.
Well then, as to old Orlick, he's a going uptown. Two can go uptown. Can't only one what can go uptown?
Don't lose your temper.
Sounds like someone there uptowning. Now, master, come. No favour in this shop.
Well, as you stick to your men in general as well as most men, let it be half holiday for all.
Like you, giving holidays to idle offers like that. I wish I were his master.
You'd be everybody's master if you durst.
Oh, leave her alone.
Well, I'd be a match for all noodles and all rogues, and you who are the blackest looking and worst from here to France now.
You're a foul shrew. If that makes a judge of rogues, you ought to be a good one.
Leave her alone, will you?
What did you call me? What did you call me? What did this fellow Orlick say to me here, Pip? What did he say before my husband standing here? What name did he give me before the base man who swore to defend me? Oh, hold me! Oh!
I'd hold you. You was my wife. I'd hold you under the pump and choke it out of you.
What do you mean interfere betwixt myself and Mrs. Joe? And furthermore, be you men, come on.
It was as thus that my half-holiday started. I found myself again going to Miss Havisham's.
Well, I hope you want nothing. You'll get nothing.
No, indeed, Miss Havisham. I only wanted you to know that I'm doing very well in my apprenticeship, and am always much obliged to you.
Well, there. Come now and then. Come on your birthday. You are looking around for Estella, eh?
I hope she's well.
Abroad, educating for a lady, far out of reach. admired by all who see her, prettier than ever. Do you feel that you have lost her?
My holiday over, I set off for home. But the memory of Satan's house bewildered me, and under its influence I continued at heart to hate my trade and to be ashamed of home.
There's something wrong up at your place, Pip.
Ronald! What is it?
I can't quite understand. The house seems to have been violently entered when Joe Gargery was out, supposed by convicts. Somebody's been attacked and hurt. The bystanders drew back when they saw Pip, and so he became aware of his sister.
Lying without sense on the bare boards where she had been knocked down by a tremendous blow to the back of the head, while her face was turned toward the fire by an unknown hand. Destined never to be on the rampage again, while she was the wife of Joe.
Her sight was disturbed so that she saw objects multiplied and grasped at visionary teacups and wine glasses instead of the realities. Her hearing was greatly impaired, her memory also, and her speech was unintelligible.
Such a fine figure of a woman as ever she were, Pip.
As to Orlick, I confess that it was expected to see Mrs. Joe denounce him, and all were disappointed by a different result. She manifested the greatest anxiety to be on good terms with him, and showed every desire to conciliate him, such as the bearing of a child towards a hard master.
They were at a loss to find a suitable attendant for her, until a circumstance happened, conveniently to relieve them.
And Biddy, Pip's first teacher and an orphan like himself, became a part of the establishment. Imperceptibly, however, Pip became conscious of Biddy. She was not beautiful, she was common and could not be like Estella, but she was wholesome and pleasant and sweet-tempered. She had not been with them more than a year when he observed to himself one evening that she had curiously thoughtful and attentive eyes that were very pretty and very good. They were out walking one day.
Biddy, how do you manage it? Either I'm very stupid or you're very clever.
What is it that our manager don't know?
How do you manage, Biddy, to learn everything I learn and always keep up with me?
I suppose I must catch it, like a cough.
Biddy, I want to be a gentleman.
Oh, I wouldn't if I were you. I don't think it would answer.
Biddy, I have particular reasons for wanting to be a gentleman.
Well, you know best, Pip, but don't you think you're happier as you are?
Biddy, I am not happy at all as I am. I'm disgusted with my calling and with my life. Don't be absurd.
Was I absurd? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be. I only want you to do well and to be comfortable.
Well then, understand once and for all that I never shall or can be comfortable, or anything but miserable. There, Biddy. Unless I can lead a very different sort of life from the life I lead now.
That is a pity.
Instead of that, see how I'm going on. Dissatisfied and uncomfortable and... What would it signify to me being coarse and common if nobody had taught me so?
That is neither a very true nor a very polite thing to say. Who said it?
The beautiful young lady at Miss Havisham's. She's more beautiful than anybody ever was. And I admire her dreadfully. And I want to be a gentleman on her account.
Do you want to be a gentleman in order to spite her or to gain her?
I don't know.
Because if it is to spite her, I should think, but you know best, that would be better and more independently done by caring nothing for her words. And if it is to gain her over, I should think, but you know best, that she were not worth gaining.
It may all be quite true, but I admire her dreadfully.
I'm glad of one thing, and that is that you have felt you could give me your confidence, Pip. If your first teacher, dear, such a poor one and so in need of being taught herself, had been your teacher at the present time, she thinks she knows what lesson she would set. But it would be a hard one to learn, and you've got beyond her, and it is of no use now.
Biddy, I shall always tell you everything.
Till you're a gentleman.
You know I never shall be, so that's always.
And then, in the 4th year of Pip's apprenticeship to Joe, and the 18th year of his life, there was that Saturday night. There was a group assembled around the fire at the Jolly Barn. Of that group, Pip was one.
The newspapers had told us that a highly popular murder had been committed, and we were imbrued in blood to the eyebrows. We gloated over every aberrant adjective in the description, and identified ourselves with every witness at the inquest.
We faintly moaned, "I'm done for," as the victim, and barbarously bellowed, "I'll serve you out," as the murderer.
We gave the medical testimony in pointed imitation of our local practitioner.
Expressed a doubt regarding the mental competency of that witness.
We enjoyed ourselves thoroughly and were delightfully comfortable. In this cozy state of mind, we came to the verdict. Willful murder!
Then, and not sooner, I became aware of a strange gentleman looking on.
Well, you have settled it all to your own satisfaction, I have no doubt. Guilty, of course. Out with it, come.
Yes!
I know you do. I knew you would. I told you so. But now I'll ask you a question. Do you know, or do you not know, that the law of England supposes every man to be innocent until proved to be guilty? Which is it to be? Now, do you know it or don't you know it? Certainly you know it, then why didn't you say so at first? Now, turn to that paper and tell me whether it distinctly states that the prisoner expressly said that his legal advisors instructed him altogether to reserve his defense.
I read that just now.
Never mind what you read just now. I don't ask you what you read just now. You may read the Lord's Prayer backwards if you like, and perhaps have done so before today. Now, follow that passage with your eye and tell me whether it distinctly states that the prisoner expressly said that he was instructed by his legal advisors wholly to reserve his defense. Come, do you make that of it?
Yes!
Yes! And now I ask you, what do you say to the conscience of that man who, with that passage before his eye, can lay his head upon his pillow after having pronounced a fellow creature guilty unheard? And that same man, remember, that same man might be summoned as a juryman upon this very trial, and having thus deeply committed himself, might return to the bosom of his family and lay his head upon his pillow, having deliberately sworn to uphold the issue joined between our sovereign lord the king and the prisoner at the bar, and would a true verdict give according to the evidence, so help him God. From information I have received, I have reason to believe that there is a blacksmith among you by name Joseph or Joe Gaudry. Which is the man?
Here is the man.
You have an apprentice commonly known as Pip. Is he here?
I am here. The stranger did not recognize me, but I recognized him as the gentleman I met on the occasion of my second visit to Miss Havisham's.
My name is Jaggers, and I'm a lawyer in London. I have a new little business to transact with you, and I commence by explaining that it is not of my originating. My advice in being asked, I should not have been here. It was not asked, and you see me here. Now, Joseph Gaudry, I am the bearer of an offer to relieve you of this young fellow, your apprentice. You would want nothing for so doing?
Lord forbid I should want anything for not standing in Pip's way.
Lord forbidding is pious, but not to the purpose. And now I return to this young fellow, and the communication I've got to make is that he has great expectations. I'm instructed to communicate to him that he is to inherit a handsome property. Further, that he be immediately removed from his present sphere of life and from this place, and be brought up as a gentleman. In a word, as a young fellow of great expectations. Now, Mr. Pip, I address the rest of what I have to say to you. You are to understand, first, that it is the request of the person from whom I take my instructions that you always bear the name of Pip. If you have any objection, now's the time to mention it. I should think not. Now, you are to understand, secondly, Mr. Pip, that the name of the person who is your liberal benefactor remains a profound secret until that person chooses to reveal it. That secret is solely held by that person and by me. You will please consider me your guardian. I tell you at once, I am paid for my services, or I shouldn't render them. It is considered that you must be better educated, and that you will be alive to the importance and necessity of at once entering on that advantage.
I have always longed for it.
Never mind what you have always longed for, Mr. Pip. Keep to the record. If you long for it now, that's enough. Am I answered that you are ready to be placed at once under some proper tutor? Is that it?
Yes, that is it.
Good. There's a certain tutor of whom I have some knowledge, who I think might suit the purpose. I don't recommend him. Observe, because I never recommend anybody. Gentleman of whom I speak is one Mr. Matthew Pocket.
Did you catch that name? Miss Havisham's relation. I am much obliged to you for the mention of Mr. Matthew Pocket, and I will gladly try that gentleman.
Good. You had better try him in his own house. The way will be prepared for you, and you can see his son first, who is in London. When will you come to London?
I suppose I could come directly.
First, you should have some new clothes to come in, and they should not be working clothes. Say, this day week. You'll want some money. Shall I leave you 20 guineas? Well, Mr. Garfield, you look dumbfounded.
I am.
It was understood that you wanted nothing for yourself, remember?
It is understood, and it are understood, and it ever will be similar accordingly.
But what if it was in my instruction to make you a present as compensation?
Compensation what for?
For the loss of his services.
Oh, Pip is that hearty welcome to go free with his services, to honor and fortune, as no words can tell him. But as if you think money can make compensation to me for the loss of the little child, which come to the forge, and ever the best of friends.
Oh, dear good Joe, whom I was so ready to leave and so unthankful to. I see you again with your voice, with your chest heaving and your voice dying away.
Now, Joseph Gargery, I warn you, this is your last chance. No half measures with me. If you mean to take a present that I have it in charge to make you, speak out and you shall have it. If, on the contrary, you mean to say...
Which I meant to say, if you come in my place bull-baiting and badgering, come out. Which I meant to say, as such, if you're a man, come on. Which I meant to say, that what I say, I meant to say, and stand or fall by.
Well, Mr. Pip, I think the sooner you leave here as you are to be a gentleman, the better. Let it stand for this day week. Understand that I express no opinion, one way or other, on the trust I undertake. I am paid for undertaking it, and I do so. Now understand that, finally. Understand that.
Joe, have you told Biddy?
No, Pip. Which I left it to yourself, Pip.
I would rather you told Joe.
Pip's a gentleman of fortune, and God bless him in it.
Saturday night. 5 more days and then the day before the day. They'll soon go.
Yes, Pip. They'll soon go.
Oh, I have been thinking, Joe, that when I go downtown on Monday to order my new clothes, I shall tell the tailor that I'll come and put them on there. It would be very disagreeable to be stared at by all the people here. They would make such a business of it, such a coarse and common business, that I could not bear myself.
That indeed, Pip. If you couldn't bear it yourself...
Oh, you may be sure, dear Joe, that I shall never forget you.
No, Pip. Old chap, bless you. It was only necessary to get it well round in a man's mind, to be certain on it. But it took a bit of time getting it well round. The change come so uncommon plump, didn't it?
I have always wanted to be a gentleman.
Have you, though? Astonished?
It's a pity now, Joe, that you did not get on a little more when we had our lessons here, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I'm so awful dull. I'm only master of my own trade. It were always a pity that I was so awful dull. But it's no more a pity now than it was this day, 12th month. Don't you see?
Biddy, I hope that you will not omit any opportunity of helping Joe on a little.
How helping him on?
Well, Joe is a dear good fellow. In fact, I think he is the dearest fellow that ever lived. But he is rather backwards, Biddy, and he's learning in his manners.
Oh, his manners. Won't his manners do them?
My dear Biddy, they do very well here.
Oh, they do very well here.
Hear me out. But if I were to remove Joe into a higher sphere, as I shall hope to remove him when I fully come into my property, they would hardly do him justice.
And don't you think he knows that?
Biddy, what do you mean?
Have you never considered that he may be proud?
Proud?
Oh, there are many kinds of pride. Pride is not all of one kind.
Well, what are you stopping for?
Not all of one kind. Have you never considered that he may be too proud to let someone take him out of a place that he is competent to fill and fills well and with respect?
Now, Biddy, I am very sorry to see this in you. I did not expect to see this in you. You are envious, Biddy, and grudging. You are dissatisfied on account of my rise in fortune, and you can't help showing it.
If you have that, think so, say so. Say so over and over again. If you have that, think so.
Or if you have the heart to be so, you mean, Biddy. Don't put it off upon me. I'm extremely sorry to see this in you. It's a bad side of human nature. After this, I ask you nothing. I'm extremely sorry to see this in you. It's a bad side of human nature.
Whether you scold me or approve of me, you may equally depend on my doing all that lies in my power here at all times. And whatever opinion you take away of me will make no difference in my remembrance of you.
So the next day, I went into town as early as I could hope to find the shops open.
And Pip selected for himself a suit. After this memorable event, he went to the hatters, and to the bootmakers, and to the hosiers. And when he had ordered everything he had ever wanted, he went circuitously to Miss Havisham's. By all the back ways, as that is the best way not to be seen and stabbed at.
Well, Pip.
I start for London, Miss Havisham. Tomorrow, and I will be kindly enough mind my taking leave of you.
This is a gay figure, Pip.
I have come into such good fortune since I saw you last, Miss Havisham. And I am so grateful for it, Miss Havisham.
I have seen Mr. Jaggers. I know all about it. So, you go tomorrow.
Yes, Miss Havisham.
And you are adopted by a rich person?
Yes, Miss Havisham.
Not named?
No, Miss Havisham.
And Mr. Jaggers has made your guardian?
Yes, Miss Havisham.
Well, you have a promising career before you. Be good, deserve it, and abide by Mr. Jaggers' instructions. Goodbye, Pip.
And so I left my fairy godmother. For who else could she be? Well, I suppose I must be off.
Pip walked away at a good pace, thinking it was easier to go than Pip supposed it would be. But the village was very peaceful and quiet, and the light mists were solemnly rising, as if to show him the world.
Goodbye. Oh, my dear friend. Heaven knows we never be ashamed of our tears, for they are the rain upon the blinding dust of earth, overlying our hard hearts. I was better after I had cried, more sorry, more aware of my own ingratitude, more gentle. If I had cried before, I should have had Joe with me. But I went on, and the mist had solemnly risen now, and the world lay spread out before me.
The journey from the town to the metropolis was a journey of about 5 hours. It was midday when Pip got into the rabble of traffic frayed out around Wood Street, Cross Keys, Cheapside, London.
We Britons have particularly settled that it is treasonable to doubt our having and our being the best of everything. Otherwise, while I was scared by the immensity of London, I had some faint doubts whether it was not rather ugly, crooked, narrow, and dirty.
Pip duly set out for Mr. Jaggers of Little Brick.
Is Mr. Jaggers at home?
He is not. He is in court at present. Am I addressing Mr. Pip? And Mr. Jaggers left word, would you wait? He couldn't say how long he might be having a case on, but it stands to reason, his time being valuable, that he won't be longer than he can help.
Get out! Get out! Sit down.
Here's Mike.
Your man comes on this afternoon.
Well, Master Jaggers, after a deal of trouble, I think I found one that just won't do.
What is he prepared to swear?
Mr. Jaggers, in a general way, anything.
Now, I warned you before. If you ever presume to talk in that way here, I'd make an example of you, you infernal scoundrel!
Spoony, softer, did you say it face to face?
Now I ask you, you blundering booby, what the man you have brought here is prepared to swear.
Either to character or to having been in his company and never left his side or the not in question.
Now be careful. In what station of life is this man?
Just a
You
moment.
have you?
Spoony!
He is dressed like a respectable barman, a sort of pastry cook.
Let me see him. Tell him to take his witness away directly and ask him what he means by bringing such a fellow as that. Now, you are to go to Barnard's Inn, young Mr. Pocket's rooms, where a bed is being sent in for your accommodation. On Monday, you are to go with him to his father's house on a visit. You might try how you like it. Of course, you'll go wrong somehow, but that's no fault of mine. Wemmick shall walk round with you directly.
So, you've never been in London before?
No.
I was new here once. Rum to think of now.
You are well acquainted with
Why,
it.
yes, I know the moves of it.
Is it a very wicked place?
You may get cheated, robbed and murdered in London, but there are plenty of people anywhere who do that for you.
If there is bad blood between you and them.
Oh, I don't know about bad blood. There's not so much bad blood about. They'll do it if there's anything to be got by it.
That makes it worse.
You think so? Much about the same, I should say. Here we are. You don't want me anymore.
No.
As I keep the cash, we shall most likely meet pretty often. Good day.
Good day.
Oh, to be sure, yes, you're in the habit of shaking hands. I've got so out of it. Very glad, I'm sure, to make your acquaintance. Good day.
After this, I was content to take a foggy view of the city, saying to myself that London was decidedly overrated.
Mr. Pip! Mr. Pocket? Oh, dear me, I'm extremely sorry, but I knew there was a coach coming from your part of the country at midday, and I thought you might come by that one. Oh, perhaps you might like to take a walk about London. I am sure I shall be very happy to show London to you. Oh, as to our lodgings, it is by no means splendid, for I have my own bread to earn, and my father hasn't anything to give me, and I shouldn't be willing to take it if he had. Lord bless me. You're the prowling boy. And you are the pale young gentleman. The idea of it being you.
Oh, the idea of it being you.
Well, I hope it's all over with now, and it will be magnanimous in you if you forgive me for having knocked you about so. Oh, you hadn't come into your good fortune at that time?
No.
No, I heard it happened very lately. I was rather on the lookout for good fortune then.
Indeed.
Yes, Miss Havisham had sent for me to see if she could take a fancy to me. But she couldn't. In all events, she didn't. Bad taste, but a fact. Yes, she had sent for me on a trial visit. And if I had come out of it successfully, I suppose I would have been provided for. Perhaps I would have been, whatchamacallit, to Estella.
What's that?
Affianced, betrothed, engaged, what's his name, any word of that sort.
How did you bear your disappointment?
Oh, pooh! I didn't care much for her. That girl is a Tartar.
Miss Havisham.
I don't say no to that, but I meant Estella. That girl is hard and haughty and capricious to the last degree, and has been brought up by Miss Havisham to wreak revenge on all the male sex.
What relation is she to Miss Havisham?
None, only adopted.
Well, why should she wreak revenge on all the male sex? What revenge?
Lord Mr. Pip, don't you know?
No.
Oh, well, it's quite a story, and shall be safe till dinner time.
It was a nice little dinner, and it acquired additional relish from being eaten upon those independent circumstances with no old people by, and with London all around us.
Now let me take the liberty of asking you a question. How did you come there that day?
And Pip told him his whole story, beginning at the marshes, and laid stress on his being forbidden to inquire who his benefactor was. He further mentioned that as he had been brought up a blacksmith in the country, he would take it as an extreme kindness if Herbert dropped him a hint whenever he saw him at a loss or going wrong.
Absolutely. What a wonderful story.
May I remind you of your promise to tell me about Miss Havisham?
Oh, true. I'll redeem it at once. Let me introduce the topic, my dear boy, by mentioning that in London it's not the custom to put a knife in the mouth for fear of accident. This is scarcely worth mentioning, only it is well to do as other people do. Also, the spoon is generally not used overhand, but under. This has an advantage as you get at your mouth better, which, after all, is the object. Now, concerning Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham, you must know, was a spoilt child. Her mother died when she was a baby, and her father denied her nothing. Her father was a country gentleman down in your part of the world, and was a brewer. Well, Mr. Havisham was very rich and very proud. So was his daughter.
Miss Havisham was adopted was an only child.
Stop a moment. I was coming to that. No, she was not an only child. She had a half-brother. Her father privately married again. His cook, I rather think.
I thought you said he was proud.
Oh, my dear boy, so he was. He married his second wife privately because he was proud. And in course of time she died. As the son grew a young man, he turned out riotous, undutiful, extravagant, altogether bad. At last, his father disinherited him, but softened when he was dying and left him well off again, though not nearly as well off as Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham was now an heiress, and, as you might suppose, was considered a great match. Her half-brother had now ample means again, but what with debt and what with newfound madness, wasted them most fearfully again. Now I come to the cruel part of this story. Merely breaking off to remark that the dinner napkin will not go into the tumbler.
Why I was trying to pack mine into my tumbler, I am wholly unable to say.
There appeared upon the scene a certain man who made love to Miss Havisham. Well, this man pursued Miss Havisham closely and professed to be devoted to her. Miss Havisham loved him passionately, and he practiced on her affection so that he got great sums of money and induced her to buy her brother out of his share of the brewery at an immense price. But she was too haughty and too much in love to be advised by anyone. The marriage day had come. The wedding dress was on. The wedding guest had arrived. The wedding tour was planned out. One wedding shoe was on, when a letter came which heartlessly broke the marriage off, which she received when she was dressing for her marriage at 20 minutes to 9, at the hour and minute, at which afterwards she stopped all the clocks. And after she recovered, she laid the whole place to waste as you have seen it, and has not since looked upon the light of day.
He will come and see me at last, when I am laid dead upon the table.
It has been supposed that the man to whom she gave a misplaced confidence acted throughout in concert with her half-brother, that it was a conspiracy, and that they shared the profits. What became of the two men? They fell into deepest shame and degradation, if there can be deeper, and ruin. Are they alive now? I don't know. You said just now that Miss Havisham, that Estella was not related to Miss Havisham, but adopted. When adopted?
There has always been an Estella since I've heard of Miss Havisham. I know no more. And now we have a perfectly open understanding between you and me. All that I know about Miss Havisham, you know.
And all that I know, you know.
I fully believe it. So there can be no competition or perplexity between you and me.
We were very gay and sociable that evening, and I asked him in the course of conversation what he was.
Oh, a capitalist! An insurer of ships! I shall not rest merely employing my capital in insuring ships. I shall trade to the East Indies for silks, shawls, spices, drugs, dyes, and precious woods. It's an interesting trade.
And the profits are large.
Immense!
You will want a good many ships.
A perfect fleet.
Where are the ships you insure traded to at present?
I haven't begun insuring yet. I am looking about me.
Ah.
Yes, I am in a counting house and looking about me.
Is a counting house profitable?
Do you mean to the young fellow who's in it?
Yes, to you.
Why, no. Not directly profitable. Profitable! That is, it doesn't pay me anything and I have to keep myself. But the thing is that you look about you. That's the grand thing. Then the time comes when you see your opening and you go in and swoop upon it!
If I could buy the furniture now hired for me and one or two other little things, I should be quite at home with Mr. Posh.
Go it! I told you you'd get on. Well, how much do you want?
I don't know how much.
Come, how much? £50?
Oh, not nearly so much.
£5?
Oh, more than that.
Come, let's get at it. Twice 5, will that do? 3 times 5, will that do? 4 times 5, will that do?
I think that would do nicely.
Now, what do you make of 4 times 5?
What do I make of it?
How much?
I suppose you make it £20.
Never mind what I make it, my friend. I want to know what you make it.
£20, of course.
Let me take Mr. Pitt's written order and pay him £20.
I hardly know what to make of Mr. Jagger's manner.
Tell him that, and he'll take it as a compliment. He don't mean that you should know what to make of it. Oh, it's not personal. It's professional. Only professional. Always seems to me as if he'd set a man trap and was watching it. Suddenly, click, you're caught.
Without remarking that man-traps were not among the amenities of life, I said I supposed he was very skillful.
Deep as Australia. If there was anything deeper, he'd be it. If, at any old time when you had nothing better to do, if you wouldn't mind coming over to see me at me home in Walworth, I could offer you a bed and I should consider it an honour.
I should be delighted to accept your hospitality.
You don't object to an aged parent, I hope, because I've got an aged parent at me home.
Not at all.
So you've never dined with Mr. Jaggers?
Not yet.
Well, he'll give you wine, and good wine. I'll give you punch, and not bad punch. And now I'll tell you something. When you go to dine with Mr. Jaggers, have a look at his housekeeper.
Shall I see something very uncommon?
Well, you'll see a wild beast, tamed. Not so very uncommon, you'll tell me. I reply, that depends on the original wildness of the beast and the amount of taming. Keep your eye on it. He told me that he thought of inviting you this afternoon when he heard you were coming. I expect you'll get an invitation tomorrow. There it is. Me undoing. Looks pretty, don't it?
I think it was the smallest house I ever saw, with the queerest Gothic windows and a Gothic door almost too small to get in at.
There's a real flagstaff, and on Sundays I run up a flag. At 9 o'clock every night, Greenwich time, the gun fires, and when you hear him go, I think you'll say he's a stinger. Then at the back, there's a pig, and there are fowls and rabbits. Well, it's a good thing, you know. It brushes the office cobwebs away, and it pleases the aged. Oh, you wouldn't mind at once being introduced to the aged, I hope. It wouldn't put you out. Well, aged parent, how are you?
All right, Tom. All right.
Here's Mr. Pip, aged parent, and I wish you could hear his name. Not away to Mr. Pip, that's what he likes. Not away, if you please, like winking.
This is a fine place of my son, sir. A pretty pleasure ground. This spot and all the beautiful works upon it ought to be kept by the nation after my son's time.
You're proud of it as punt.
People's enjoyment.
You're proud of it as punt, ain't you, aged? There's a nod for you. There's another. You like that, don't you? If you're not tired, Mr. Pip, though I know it's tiring to strangers, will you tip him one more? You can't think how it pleases him.
I trust Mr. Jaggers admires your home.
Never seen it, never heard of it. Never seen the agent, never heard of them. No, the office is one place and private life is another. When I go to the office, I leave the castle behind me. And when I go to the castle, I leave the office behind me. If it's not in any way disagreeable, you'll oblige me by doing the same. I don't wish it professionally spoke about. Get near gunfire! The agent's treat!
He's mine! I have him!
It fell out, as Wemmick had told me it would, that I had an early opportunity of comparing my guardian's establishment with that of his cashier and clerk.
No ceremony and no dinner dress, and say tonight.
She was a woman of about 40. I cannot say whether any diseased affection of the heart caused her lips to be parted as if she were panting, and her face to bear a curious expression of suddenness and flutter. But I know that I have been to see Macbeth, and that her face looked as if it were all disturbed by fiery air, like the faces I'd seen rise out of the witch's cauldron.
I now talk of strength. I'll show you a wrist. Molly, let him see your wrist.
Master Doe.
Molly, let him see your wrist. Show Mr. Pip, come. There's power here. Very few men have the power of wrist that this woman has. It's remarkable what mere force of grip there is in these hands. I've had occasion to notice many hands, but I never saw stronger in that respect, man's or woman's, than these. That'll do, Molly. You have been admired and can go. At 9:30, Mr. Pip, we must break up. I'm exceedingly sorry to announce that it's 9:30. Good night, Pip.
Good night, sir. Such was dinner.
Pip made a visit to Sata's house, and he was thinking about his patroness and painting brilliant pictures of her plans for him.
She had adopted Estella. She had as good as adopted me, and it could not fail to be her intention to bring us together. She reserved it for me to restore the desolate house, admit the sunshine into the dark rooms, set the clocks a-going and the cold hearths a-blazing, tear down the cobwebs, destroy the vermin, in short, do all the shining deeds of the young knight of romance, and marry the princess.
In such a mind, he rang at the bell.
Orlick.
Yes, here I am. Young master, there's more changes than yours.
How did you come here?
I come here on my legs. I brought my box alongside me in a barrow.
Are you here for good?
Well, I ain't here for harm, young master, I suppose.
Then you have left the forge?
Do this look like a forge? Now, do it look like it?
When did you leave the forge?
I come here sometime since you left.
I could have told you that, Orlick.
Ah, but then you've got to be a scholar.
Well, shall I go up to see Miss Havisham?
Burn me if I know. My orders ends here, young master. You go on along the passage till you meet somebody.
Come in, Pip. Come in, Pip. How do you do, Pip?
I heard, Miss Havisham, that you were so kind as to wish me to come see you, and I came directly.
Well, do you find her much changed, Pip? Is he changed?
Very much.
Less coarse and common.
Shall we walk? I must have been a singular little creature to hide and see that fight that day. But I did, and I enjoyed it very much.
You rewarded me very much.
Did I? I remember I entertained a great objection to your adversary because I took it ill that he should be brought here to pester me with his company.
He and I are great friends now.
Since your change of fortune and prospect, you have changed your companions.
Naturally.
And necessarily what was fit company for you once would be quite unfit company for you now.
This is where I first saw you, that first all day.
You remember that? I don't remember.
Not remember that you made me cry?
No. You must know that I have no heart, if that has anything to do with my memory. Oh, I've a heart to be stabbed in or shot in, I have no doubt, and of course, if it cease to beat, I shall cease to be, but you know what I mean. I have no softness there, no sympathy, sentiment, nonsense. I am serious. If we are to be thrown much together, you had better believe it at once. No, I have not bestowed my tenderness anywhere. I have never had any such thing. What's the matter? Are you scared again?
I should be, if I believed what you said just now.
Then you don't. Very well, it is said at any rate. Miss Havisham will soon be expecting you at your old post, though I think that might be laid aside now, with other old belongings. Come. You will not shed tears for my cruelty today.
Do you find her beautiful, graceful, well-grown? Do you admire her?
Everybody must who sees her, Miss Havisham.
Love her, love her, love her. How does she use you? Love her, love her, love her. If she favors you, love her. If she wounds you, love her. If she tears your heart to pieces, and as it grows older and stronger and tears deeper, love her, love her, love her. Hear me, Pip. I adopted her to be loved. I educated and bred her to be loved. I developed her into what she is so that she might be loved. Love her. I'll tell you what real love is. It is blind devotion, unquestioning self-humiliation, utter submission, trust and belief against yourself and against the whole world, giving up your whole heart and soul to the smiter, as I did.
And Miss Havisham's words, love her, love her, love her, sounded in my ears. I adapted them for my own repetition and said, I love her, I love her, I love her, hundreds of times. Then a burst of gratitude came upon me that she should be destined for me, once the blacksmith's boy. Then I thought, if she was not rapturously grateful for that destiny yet, when would she begin to be interested in me? When should I awaken that heart within her that was mute and sleeping now? Ah, me, I thought those were high and great emotions. But did I visit Jo here at the forge? No. I never thought there was anything low or small in my keeping away from Jo, because I knew she would be contemptuous of him. And I left for London by the midday coach.
Then, Kate, I am to come to London tomorrow by the midday coach. I believe it was settled you should meet me. At all events, Miss Havisham has that impression, and I write in obedience to it. She sends you her regard. Yours is Stella. Pip felt that it was not safe to let the coach office out of his sight for more than 5 minutes at a time, and in this state of unreason, he performed a watch of 4 or 5 hours. I am to go to Richmond. Our lesson is that there are 2 Richmonds, one in Surrey and one in Yorkshire, and that mine is in Surrey Richmond. The distance is 10 miles. I am to have a carriage and you are to take me. We have no choice, you and I, but to obey our instructions. We are not free to follow our own devices, you and I.
Where are you going to at Richmond?
To live with a lady there who has the power, or says she has, of taking me about and introducing me and showing people to me and showing me to people.
You speak of yourself as if you were someone else.
Where do you learn how I should speak of others? Come, you must not expect me to go to school to you. I must speak in my own way. How do you thrive with Mr. Pocket?
I live quite pleasantly there. At least as pleasantly as I could anywhere away from you.
You ridiculous boy, will you never take warning? Or do you kiss my hand in the same manner in which I once let you kiss my cheek?
If I say yes, may I kiss the cheek again?
You should have asked before you touched the hand. But yes, if you like. Now you are to take me to Richmond, Pip.
It was the first time she had ever called me by my name!
Of course I did so purposely, for I knew that we should treasure it out.
And time and life passed.
Many a time of an evening, when I sat alone looking at the fire, I thought, after all, there was no fire like the forge fire and the kitchen fire at home.
But there was a calm, a rest, a virtuous hush which gave Pip for the moment an admirable opinion of himself. He had fallen into a serene state one evening when...
Its contents was simply that I was an honoured sir, and that they begged to inform me that Mrs. J. Gargery had departed this life on Monday last at 20 minutes past 6 in the evening, and that my attendance was requested at the interment on Monday next at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Dear chap, how are you?
Pip, old chap,
You knowed her when she was a fine figure.
as I thought it not a time for talking, I began to wonder in what part of the house she, my sister, was. Biddy, I think that you might have written to me about these sad matters.
Do you, Mr. Pip? I should have written if I had thought that.
How are you going to live if you want any money?
How am I going to live? I'll tell you, Mr. Pip. I'm going to try and get the place of mistress in the new school nearly finished here. You know, Mr. Pip, the new schools are not like the old, but I've had the time to learn a great deal from you since that time, and I've had time since then to improve.
I think you would always improve, Biddy, under any circumstance.
Except in my bad side of human nature.
I have not heard the particulars of my sister's death, Biddy.
They are very slight, poor thing. She had been in one of her bad states for 4 days. When she came out of it in the evening, just at tea time, and said quite plainly, "Joe." As she had not spoken any word for a long time, I ran to fetch Mr. Gargery from the forge. She made signs that she wanted him to sit down next to her, and wanted me to put her arms round his neck. So I put them round his neck, and she very presently said, "Joe." Again, "Pardon." And once, "Pip." And so, she never lifted her head up anymore.
Biddy, we must often speak of these things, for of course I shall often be down here now. I'm not going to leave poor Joe alone. Biddy, don't you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Pip.
Not to mention you're calling me Mr. Pip, which appears to me to be in bad taste. Biddy, what do you mean?
What do I mean?
Biddy, I must request to know what you mean by this.
By this.
Now don't echo, Biddy. Use not to echo.
Use not, Mr. Pip. Use.
Biddy, I made a remark respecting my coming down here often to see Joe, which you received with the marked silence. Have the goodness, Biddy, tell me why.
Are you quite sure then that you will come down to see him often?
Often as I was restless in the night, that was every quarter of an hour, I reflected what an unkindness, what an injury, what an injustice Biddy had done me. Goodbye, dear Joe. Oh, no, don't wipe it off, for God's sake. Give me your blacking pan. I shall be down soon and often.
Never too soon, sir. Never too often, Pip.
Biddy, I'm not angry, but I am hurt.
No, don't be hurt. Let only me be hurt if I've been unjust.
Once more the mist were rising as I walked away. If they disclosed to me, as I suspect they did, that I should not come back, and that Biddy was quite right, all I can say is, they were quite right too.
On the day of his coming of age, he found himself in the office of his guardian. Well, Pip, I must call you Mr. Pip today. Congratulations, Mr. Pip.
Thank you.
Now, have you anything to ask me?
Of course, it would be a great relief of me to ask you several questions.
Ask one.
Is my benefactor to be made known to me today?
No, ask another.
Is that confidence to be imparted to me soon?
Wait that a moment and ask another.
Have I anything to receive, sir?
I thought we should come to it. Now, Mr. Pip, attend if you please. Now, take this paper in your hand. Have you got it? Good. Now unfold it and tell me what it is.
This is a banknote for £500.
That is a banknote for £500. And a very handsome sum of money, I think, too. You consider it so?
How could I do otherwise?
But answer the question.
Undoubtedly.
You consider it, undoubtedly, a handsome sum of money. Now, Mr. Pip, that handsome sum of money is your own. And at the rate of that handsome sum of money per annum, and at no higher rate, you are to live until the donor of the whole appears.
There was a question just now, Mr. Jaggers, which you desired me to waive for a moment.
What is it?
Is it likely that my patron, the fountainhead that you have spoken of, will soon...
Will soon what? That's no question as it stands, you know.
Will soon come to London, or summon me anywhere else?
Come, I'll be plain, my friend Pip. That's a question I must not be asked. You'll understand that better when I tell you it's a question that might compromise me. And that's all I have got to say.
If that is all you have to say, sir, then there can be nothing left for me to say. Mr. Wemmick, I want to ask your opinion. I am very desirous to serve a friend. This friend is trying to get on in commercial life, but has no money and finds it difficult and disheartening to make a beginning. Now, I want to help him to a beginning with some money.
Mr. Pip, I should just like to run over with you, on me fingers, if you please, the names of the various bridges. Let's see, there's London, 1, Southwark, 2, Blackfriars, 3, Waterloo, 4, Westminster, 5, Vauxhall, 6. There's as many as 6, you see, to choose from.
I don't understand.
Choose your bridge, Mr. Pip. Take a walk upon your bridge and pitch your money in the Thames, and you know the end of it. Serve a friend with it too, and you know the end of it as well. But it's a less pleasant and profitable end.
This is very discouraging.
Meant to be so.
Then it is your opinion that a man should never...
Invest portable property in a friend. Certainly he should not, unless he wants to get rid of the friend. And then it becomes a question of how much portable property it might be worth to get rid of him. opinion.
And that is your deliberate opinion, Mr. Wemmick?
That is my deliberate opinion. In this office.
Ah. But would that be your opinion at Walworth?
Mr. Pip, Walworth is one place and this office is another.
Very well. Then I shall look you up at Walworth.
Mr.
You may
Pip,
depend upon it.
You shall be welcome there, in a private and personal capacity.
And so Pip set about taking Mr. Wemmick's Walworth sentiments.
Well, you know, Mr. Pip, I must tell you one thing. This is devilish good of you.
Say you'll help me to be good then.
Because that's not my trade.
Nor is this your trading place.
You are right. You've hit the nail on the head. Mr. Pip, I'll put on me considering cap, and I think all you want to do may be done by degrees.
I thank you 10,000 times.
On the contrary, I thank you, for though we are strictly in our private and personal capacity, still it may be said there are office cobwebs about, and it brushes them away. Before a week was out, Pip received a note from Wemmick, dated Walworth. The upshot was that there was found a worthy young shipping broker who wanted intelligent help, and who wanted capital, and who, in due course of time, would want a partner. Pip paid him half his £500 down, and engaged for sundry other payments. Wemmick pervaded it throughout the negotiations, but never appeared in them.
I never shall forget the radiant face with which Herbert came home one afternoon and told me, as a mighty piece of news, of his falling in with one Clarica, and having that day entered Clarica's house, he having told me for a whole evening in a flush of pleasure and success. I did really cry in good earnest when I went to bed, to think that my expectations had done some good to somebody.
A great event in Pip's life, the turning point of his life, now opens to our view.
But before we proceed to narrate it, and before we pass on to all the changes it involves, we must first give a few words to Estella. It is not much to give to the theme that so long filled his heart. Pip, will you never take warning?
Of what?
Of me.
Wanting me not to be attracted by you, do you mean, Estella?
Do I mean? If you don't know what I mean, then you are blind. The time has come round when Miss Havisham wishes to have me for a day at Sadie's. You are to take me. Can you take me?
Can I take you, Estella?
You can then.
I must obey.
They went down on the next day, and it is needless to add that there was no change in Sadie's house. Miss Havisham was even more dreadfully fond of Estella than she had been when we last saw them together. For there was something positively dreadful in the energy of her looks and embraces. She hung upon Estella's beauty, hung upon her words, hung upon her gestures, and sat mumbling her own trembling fingers as she looked at her, as though she were devouring the beautiful creature she had reared.
What? Are you tired of me?
Only a little tired of myself.
Speak the truth, you ingrate. You are tired of me, you stock and stone, you cold heart.
What? Do you reproach me for being cold? You?
Are you not?
You should know I am what you have made me.
Oh, look at her, look at her, look at her. So hard and thankless on the hearth when she was
But what
reared.
would you have? I owe you everything. You have been very good to me. What would you have?
Love.
You have it.
I have not.
All that I have is yours. I have nothing to give. If you ask me to give you what you never gave me, my gratitude and duty cannot do impossibilities.
Did I never give her love? Did I never give her a burning love inseparable from jealousy at all time, and from sharp pain while she speaks thus to me? Let her call me mad!
Why should I call you mad? I, of all people. Does anyone live who knows what set purposes you have half as well as I do? Learning your lessons and looking up into your face when your face was strained and frightened me. No, not forgotten. Not forgotten, but treasured up in my memory. When have you found me giving false to your teaching? When have you found me giving admission here to anything that you excluded just to me? Who taught me to be proud? Who praised me when I learned my lesson? Who taught me to be hard? Who praised me when I learned my lesson?
But to be proud and hard to me, Estella. To be proud
I cannot
and hard
think why
to
you should
me.
be so unreasonable when I come to see you after a separation. I have never forgotten your wrongs or their causes. I have never been unfaithful to you or your schooling. I have never given any admission to any weakness I can charge myself with.
Is it a weakness to return my love? Oh, yes, she would have it
I think I almost see how this comes about. If you had taught your adopted daughter from the dawn of her intelligence and with your utmost energy and might that there was such a thing as daylight, but that it was made to be her enemy and her destroyer, and she must always turn against it, for it had blighted you and would else blight her. If you had done this, and then for a purpose, had wanted her to take naturally to the light, and she could not do it, you would be disappointed and angry. So, I must be taken as I have been made. The success is not mine. The failure is not mine, but the two together make me.
And now that we have given these words to the theme that so fills Pip's heart and so often made it ache and ache again, we pass on, unhindered, to the event. Pip was alone, reading, and had a dull sense of being alone. All the church clocks in the city, some leading, some accompanying, some following, struck the hour of 11, and there was a footstep on the stair.
There is someone there, is there not?
Yes,
Who do you want?
Mr. Pip.
That is my name. There is nothing the matter.
Nothing the matter.
My convict.
You acted noble, my boy, noble Pip, and I've never forgot you.
Stay, keep off.
May I make so bold as ask how you've done well
How?
since you and me was out on the lone shivering marshes?
How? I have been chosen to succeed into some property.
Might a mere varmint ask what property?
I don't know.
Might a mere varmint ask whose property?
I don't know.
Could I make a guess, I wonder, at your income since you come of age? As to the first figure, 5, concerning a guardian while she was a minor, some lawyer maybe. As to the first letter of that lawyer's name, would it be J? And might it be Jaggers? Yes, Pip, me boy. I made a gentleman on you. It's me what has done it. I swore that time, sure as ever I earned a guinea, that guinea should go to you. I lived rough, that you should live smooth. Looky here, boy. I'm your second father. You're me son more to me nor any son. I made me boy a gentleman. Don't you mind talking, Pip? You can't do better, no, keep quiet. You ain't looked slowly forward to this as I have. You wasn't prepared for this as I was. But didn't you never think it might be me?
Oh, no, never.
Well, it was me, and single-handed. Never a soul in it but me own self. And Mr. Jaggers.
Was there no one else?
Who else should there be? And, dear boy, how good-looking you've growed. There's bright eyes somewhere, eh? Isn't there bright eyes somewhere what you love the thoughts on?
Oh, Stella, then he had never come.
But, dear boy, caution is necessary.
How do you mean, caution?
By God, it's death.
What's death?
I was sent away for life. It's death to come back.
Nothing was needed but this. The wretched man, after loading wretched me with his gold and silver chains, had risked his life to come to see me, and I held it there in my keeping. Miss Havisham's intentions towards me all a mere dream. A Stella not designed for me. I only suffered in Satyrs' house as a convenience. Those were the first smarts I had, but sharpest and deepest pain of all. It was for the convict, guilty of I knew not what crimes and liable to be taken out and hanged, that I had deserted Joe. I would not have gone back to Joe now. I would not have gone back to Biddy now for any consideration, simply, I suppose, because of the sense of my own worthless conduct to them. The clocks on the eastward churches were striking 5. The candles were wasted out, and the wind and the rain intensified the thick black darkness.
So looky here. Whatever I've done is worked out and paid for. I'm not a-going to tell you me life like a song or a storybook. But to give it you short and handy, I'll put it at once into a mouthful of English. In jail and out of jail. In jail and out of jail. In jail and out of jail. There, you got it. That's me life, pretty much. I've been locked up as much as a silver tea kettle. But what the devil was I to do? I've got to put something into me stomach, mustn't I? Howsomever I'm a-getting low and I know what to do. At Epsom races, a matter of over 20 years ago, I got acquainted with a man whose skull I'd cracked like a claw of a lobster. His right name was Compeyson. And that's the man what you saw me a-pounding in the ditch. And he set up for a gentleman, this Compeyson, and he'd been to public boarding school and had learning.
To judge from appearances, you're out of luck.
Yes, master, and I've never been in it much.
Luck changes, perhaps yours is going to change.
I hope it may be so, there's room.
What can you do?
Eat and drink if you'll provide the materials. And Compeyson took me on to be his man and partner. And what was Compeyson's business in which we was to go, partners? Compeyson's business was the swindling, handwriting forging, stolen banknote passing and such like. He had no more art than an iron fire. He was as cold as death, and he had the head of the devil aforementioned. There was another in with Compeyson, as was called Arthur. He was in decline, and was a shadow to look at. Him and Compeyson had been in a bad thing with a rich lady some years afore. So Arthur was a-dying, and a-dying poor. And with the horrors on him, I heard him say,
She really is upstairs along with me now, and I can't get rid of her. And she's all white, and she's got white flowers in her hair, and she's awful red, and she's got a shroud hanging over her arm.
Why, you fool, don't you know she's got a living body? And how could she be in here without coming through the door, in at the window and up the stairs?
And where her heart's broke, you broke it. There's drops of blood. Well, look at her. She's shaking the straw at me. Take it away from her, take it away. And she's unfolding it. She's coming out of the corner. She's coming to the bed. Hold me. Don't let her touch me with it. Don't let her put her over my shoulder. She's lifting me up, get around me. Don't let her lift me up. Keep me down.
and he lifted himself up hard and was dead. And Compeyson took it as easy as a good riddance. The time with Compeyson was almost as hard a time as ever I had. My missus, as I had the hard time with Stockville, I ain't brought her in. There ain't no need to go into it. That said, all said, at last, me and Compeyson was both committed for felony. And Compeyson says to me,
separate offences, no communication.
and that was all. When the prosecution opened, and the evidence was put short beforehand, I noticed how heavy it all bore on me, and how light on him. And when the verdict come, weren't it Compeyson as was recommended to mercy, and weren't it me as got never a word but guilty? And when I says to Compeyson, once out of this court, I'll smash that face of yours. I said to Compeyson that I'd smash that face of his, and I swore I'd smash mine to do it. We was on the same prison ship, but I couldn't get at him for long, though I tried. At last, I escaped to the shore, and I was hiding among them graves, envying them as was in them when I first seen me boy. By me boy, I was given to understand, as Compeyson was out in the marshes too. I hunted him down. I smashed his face, and now, says I, as being the worst thing I can do, I'll drag you back. I was put in irons, put on trial again, and sentenced for life. But I didn't stop for life, dear boy, being here.
Is he dead?
Is who dead, dear boy?
Compeyson.
He hopes I am. If he's alive, you may be sure I never heard no more of him.
And so Pip felt he must see both Estella and Miss Havisham. When he drove up to Sadie's house after a drizzly ride, whom should he see but Bentley Drummle? A few words now as to Bentley Drummle. Drummle was actually the next heir but one to a baronetcy. Drummle didn't say much, but in his limited way he spoke as one of the elect. Bentley Drummle, who was so sulky a fellow that he even took up a book as if its writer had done him an injury, did not take up an acquaintance in a more agreeable spirit. Heavy in figure, movement, and comprehension, from the sluggish complexion of his face to the large, awkward tongue that lolled about in his mouth as he himself lolled about in a room. It is impossible to turn this page of Pip's life without putting Bentley Drummle's name upon it, or I would, very gladly. So Pip found Bentley in the drawing room of Satan's house.
As he pretended not to see me, I pretended not to see him. It was a very lame pretense on both sides.
Is this a cut?
Oh, it's you, is it? How do you do? I was wondering who it was who kept the fire off.
You have just come down.
Yes?
Beastly place. Your part of the country, I think.
Yes, I'm told it's very like your Shropshire.
Not in the least like it.
Have you been here long?
Long enough to be tired of it. Do you stay long?
Can't say. Do you?
Can't say. Large tract of marshes about here, I believe.
Yes. What of that?
Oh.
Are you amused, Mr. Drummle?
No, not particularly. I had meant to go for a ride in the saddle. I was going to explore those marshes for amusement. Out of the way villages there, they tell me. Curious little public houses and smithies and that. But the lady won't ride today, the weather won't do. So instead I'll just be dining with the lady.
Mr. Drummle, I did not seek this conversation, and I don't think it an agreeable one.
I'm sure it's not. I don't think anything about it.
And therefore, with your leave, I suggest that we hold no kind of communication in future.
Quite my opinion, and what I should have suggested myself, or done, more likely, without suggesting. But don't lose your temper. Haven't you lost enough without that?
And what wind blows you here, Pip?
Miss Havisham, I've come to speak to Estella, and finding that some wind had blown her here, I followed. What I have to say to Estella, Miss Havisham, I will say pleasantly before you in a few moments. It will not surprise you. It will not displease you. I am as unhappy as you can have ever meant me to be. I have found out who my patron is. I must say no more of that. It is not my secret, but another's.
Well, not your secret, but another's.
When you first caused me to be brought here, Miss Havisham, when I belonged to the village over yonder, but I wish I had never left. I suppose that I really did come here as any other chance boy might have come. As a kind of servant, to gratify one or two women to be paid for it.
Aye, Pip, you did.
And that Mr. Jaggers?
Mr. Jaggers had nothing to do with it. Mr. Jaggers knew nothing of it.
But when I fell into the mistake that I've so long remained in, at least you led me on.
Yes, I let you go on.
Was that kind?
Who am I? Who am I, for God's sake, that I should be kind?
It was a weak complaint to make, and I have not learned to make it.
Well, well, well. What else?
In humouring my mistake, Miss Havisham, you punished, practised on. Perhaps you will supply whatever term expresses your intention, your self-seeking relations.
Why, yes. They would have it so. So would you. You made your own snares. I never made them.
I have fallen in with one family of your relations, Miss Havisham, and I shall be false and base if I do not tell you that you deeply wrong both Mr. Matthew Pocket and his son Herbert, if you suppose them to be anything other than generous, upright, open, and incapable of anything desiring or mean.
They are your friends.
They made themselves my friends when they supposed me to have superseded them.
And what do you want for them?
Only that you would not confound them with the others.
And what do you want for them?
Miss Havisham, if you could spare the money to do my friend Herbert a lasting service in life, but from which the case must be done without his knowledge. I could show you how.
Why must it be done without his knowledge?
Because I began the service more than 2 years ago without his knowledge, and I don't want to be betrayed. Why I fail in my ability to finish it, I cannot explain. It is part of a secret which is not mine but another's.
What else?
Estella. You know I love you. You know that I have loved you long and dearly. I should have said this sooner, but for my long mistake, it induced me to hope that Miss Havisham meant us for one another. While I thought you could not help yourself, as it were, I refrained from saying it, but I must say it now. I know, still I love you. I have loved you ever since I first saw you in this house. It would have been cruel in Miss Havisham, horribly cruel, if she had not reflected on the gravity of what she did. But I think she did not. I think that in the endurance of her own trial, she forgot mine, Estella.
It seems that there are sentiments, fancies, I don't know how to call them, which I am not able to comprehend. When you say you love me, I understand what you mean as a form of words, but nothing more. You address nothing in my breast, you touch nothing there. I do not care for what you say at all. I have tried to warn you of this now, have I not?
Yes.
Yes, but you would not be warned, for you thought I did not mean it.
I thought and hoped you could not mean it. Surely it is not in nature.
It is in my nature. It is in the nature formed within me. I make a great difference between you and all other people when I say so much. I can do no more.
Is it not true that Bentley Drummle is in town here and pursuing you?
It is quite true.
That you encourage him and ride out with him, and that he dines with you this very day?
Quite true.
You cannot love him, Estella.
What have I told you? Do you still think, in spite of it, that I do not mean what I say?
You would never marry him, Estella.
Why not tell you the truth? I am going to be married to him. The preparations for my marriage are making, and I shall be married soon. It is my own act.
Your own act, Estella, to fling yourself away upon a brute.
On whom should I fling myself away? Should I fling myself away upon the man who would the soonest feel that I took nothing to him? There! It is done. I shall do well enough, and so will my husband. I am tired of the life I have led, which has very few charms for me, and I am willing enough to change it. Say no more. We shall never understand each other. Do not be afraid of my being a blessing to him. I shall not be that. Come. Here is my hand. Do we part on this? You, visionary boy or man?
Oh. Estella, how could I see you Drummle's wife?
Nonsense, it will pass in no time.
Never, Estella.
You will get me out of your thoughts in a week.
Out of my thoughts! You are part of my existence, part of myself. You have been in every line I have ever read. You have been in every prospect I have ever seen since. On the river, on the sails of the ships, on the marshes, in the clouds, in the light, in the darkness, in the wind, in the woods, in the sea, in the streets. You have been the embodiment of every graceful fancy that my mind has ever become acquainted with. The stones of which the strongest London buildings are made are not more real or more impossible to be displaced by your hands than your presence and influence have been to me, there and everywhere, and will be. Estella, to the last hour of my life, you are part of my character, part of the little good in me, part of the evil. But in this separation, I associate you only with the good, and will faithfully hold you to that always. For you must have done me far more good than harm. Let me feel now what sharp distress I may. Oh, God bless you. God forgive you.
All done. All gone. So much was done and gone, that when Pip went out at the gate, the light of the day seemed of a different color than when he went in.
I found a note addressed to me in Wemmick's writing on the gate outside my home.
Please read this here. Don't go home.
It was plain that I must see Wemmick before seeing anyone else, and equally plain that this was a case in which his Walworth sentiments only could be taken.
Hello, Mr. Pip. I'm going to take a liberty with you. Would you mind toasting this sausage for the aged P while I butter his bread? You know, Mr. Pip, you and I understand one another. We are in our private and personal capacity. Official sentiments are one thing. We are extra official. I accidentally heard yesterday morning, being in a certain place, it's as well not to mention names when avoidable.
Much better not, I understand.
I heard by chance that a certain person, not altogether of uncolonial pursuits or unpossessed of portable property, I don't know who it may really be, we won't name this person,
Not necessary.
had made a little stir in a certain part of the world where a good many people go, not always in gratification of their own inclination and not quite irrespective of the government expense, by disappearing from such a place and being no more heard of thereabouts. I also heard that you at your chambers had been watched.
By whom? You have heard of a man of bad character, whose true name is Compeyson. Is he living? Is he in London?
Now, questioning being over, and without mentioning names or going into any details, I gave you to understand that Mr. Pocket has taken ours by the river. Now, after a while, and when it might be prudent, if you should want to row down the Thames and slip, without mentioning names, Tom, Jack, or Richard on board a foreign-going boat, there he is, ready. Now, Mr. Pitt, I've probably done the most that I could do, but if I could ever do more from a Walworth point of view, and in a strictly private and personal capacity, I shall be glad to do it. Here's the address. Time's up. Ready? I must be off. If you have nothing more pressing to do than to keep here, that's what I would advise. You look very much worried, and it would do you good to spend a perfectly good day with the aged. He'll be up presently, and a little bit of, you remember the pig?
Of course.
Well, and a little bit of him. That sausage you toasted was his, and he was in all respects a first-rater. Do try him. Good morning, Agent P.
And I readied myself for my journey with Tom, Jack, or Richard.
As we are both going in the same direction, Pip, we may walk together. Where are you bound for?
Well, I do not know, for I have not made up my mind.
You are going to dine? You don't mind admitting that, I suppose?
No, I don't mind admitting that.
Then come and dine with me. Wemmick's coming. Do you have that letter of Miss Havisham's to Mr. Pip?
Yes, sir. Here it is.
It's a note of 2 lines, Pip, sent up to me by Miss Havisham. She tells me she wants to see you on a little matter of business you had mentioned to her. You'll go down?
Yes.
When do you think of going down?
I have an impending engagement that renders me rather uncertain of my time. At once, I think.
So, Pip, our friend Drummle has won the pool. Ha! He's a promising fellow in his way, but he may not have it all his own way. The stronger will win in the end, but the stronger has to be found out first. If he should turn to and beat her...
Surely you do not seriously think he is scoundrel enough for that, Mr. Jaggers?
A fellow like our friend Drummle either beats or cringes. He may cringe and growl, or cringe and not growl, but he either beats or cringes. Ask Wemmick his opinion.
Either beats or cringes.
So, here's to Mrs. Bentley Drummle, and may the question of supremacy be settled to the lady's satisfaction. To the satisfaction of the lady and the gentleman, it never shall be. Now, Molly, how slow you are.
He's a wonderful man, without his living likeness. But I always feel that I have to screw myself up when I dine with him, and I find that I dine more comfortably unscrewed.
Wemmick, do you remember telling me, before I first went to Mr. Jaggers' private house, to notice that housekeeper?
Did I? I dare say I did. Deuce take me, I know I did. I find I'm not quite unscrewed yet.
A wild beast tamed, you called her.
And what do you call her?
The same. I wish you would tell me her story.
Well, I don't know it all, but what I do know, I'll tell you. A score or so of years ago, that woman was tried at the Old Bailey for murder and was acquitted. Mr. Jaggers was for her and worked the case in quite a way, quite astonishing. The murdered person was a woman a good 10 years older, very much larger, very much stronger. It was a case of jealousy over a man. The murdered woman had been bruised and scratched and torn and held by the throat and choked. It was attempted to be set up in proof of her jealousy that she was under strong suspicion of having frantically destroyed this child by this man to revenge herself on him.
We say these are not marks of fingernails, but marks of brambles, and we show you the brambles. You say they are marks of fingernails, and you set up the hypothesis that she destroyed her child. You must accept all consequences of that hypothesis. For anything we know, she may have destroyed her child, and the child, in clinging to her, may have scratched her hands. What then? You are not trying her for the murder of her child. Why don't you? As to this case, if you will have scratches, we say that for anything we know, you may have accounted for them, assuming for the sake of argument that you have not invented them.
To sum up, Mr. Jaggers was altogether too many for the jury, and they gave in. She went into his service immediately after her acquittal, tamed as she is now.
Do you remember the sex of the child?
Said to have been a girl.
Is it real?
It is I, Pip. Mr. Jaggers gave me your note yesterday and I lost no time.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to discuss that subject you mentioned the last time you were here and show you that I am not all stone. You said there was something you could tell me. Tell me how to do something good and useful. Something you want done, is it not?
Something I would like done very much. But how in this I am disappointed.
What is it?
That part of the subject involves matters which can form no part of my explanation, for they are the weighty secrets of another.
So, and how much money is wanted to complete the purchase?
£900.
And if I give you this money for this purpose, do you promise to keep my secret as you have kept your own?
Quite as faithfully.
And your mind will be more at rest?
Much more at rest.
Are you very unhappy now?
I am far from happy, Miss Havisham, but I have other causes of disquiet than any you know of.
It is noble in you to tell me you have other causes for unhappiness. Is it true?
Too true.
Can I only serve you, Pip? By serving your friend? Is there nothing I can do? Regarding that as done, is there nothing I can do for you yourself?
Nothing. I thank you for the question. I thank you even more for the tone of the question. But there is nothing.
Here is an authority to pay you that sum of money. Lay it out at your irresponsible discretion for your friend. You will see my name written on the first leaf. If you could ever write under my name, I forgive her, though ever so long after my broken heart is dust, pray do it.
Oh, Miss Havisham, I can do it now. There have been sore mistakes, and my life has been a blind and thankless one, and I want forgiveness and direction far too much to be bitter with you.
What have I done? What have I done?
Miss Havisham. If you ask, Miss Havisham, what have you done to injure me? Let me answer. Very little. I should have loved her under any circumstance. Is she married?
Yes. other day until I saw in you a looking glass that showed me how I had felt myself once. I did not know what I had done. Oh, what have I done? But Pip, you must believe this, my dear. You must believe this. When she first came here, I meant to save her from a misery like my own. I meant no more. But as she grew and promised to be very beautiful, I gradually did worse. And with my praises and my jewels and my teachings, I stole her heart away and put ice in its place.
Whose child was Estella? You don't know? But Mr. Jaggers brought her here, or had her brought here.
I've been shut up in these rooms so long. I don't know how long. You know what times the clocks keep here? When I told him I wanted a little girl that I could rear and love and save from a fate like mine, he brought her in, asleep. And I called her Estella.
What more could I hope to do by prolonging the interview? We parted. So cold, so lonely, so dreary all. I looked back into the room and saw her close to the fire. In the moment, a great flaming light sprang up. In the same moment, she was a whirl of fire blazing all about her and soaring at least as many feet above her head as she was high. I threw my coat over her, and patches of tinder yet alight were floating in the smoky air, which a moment ago had been her faded bridal dress. Towards midnight, she began to wander in her speech.
What have I done? What have I done?
And then,
I meant to save her from a fate like my own.
and then,
Take this pencil and write under my name. I forgive her.
she never changed the order of these 3 sentences. My first question when I saw Herbert had been, of course, whether all was well down by the river.
I sat with Magwitch last night, my dear boy. A good 2 hours. You know, he improves.
I told you, I thought he softened when I saw him last.
So you did. And so he has. He was very communicative last night and told me more about his life. Do you remember his breaking off here about a woman with he had great trouble with? Did I hurt you just now?
I had forgotten that, Herbert, but I remember it now you speak of it.
Well, he went into that part of his life, and what a dark and wild part it is. Should I tell you, or would it worry you just now?
Tell me, by all means, every word.
It seems this woman was a young woman, and a revengeful woman, and a jealous woman, and revengeful to the last degree.
To what last degree?
Murder.
How did she murder? Whom did she murder?
It was another, and a stronger woman who was the victim. There had been a struggle in a barn. Who began it, or how fair it was or unfair it was, maybe doubtful, but how it ended was certainly not doubtful, for the victim was found throttled.
Was the woman brought in guilty?
No, she was acquitted. And this acquitted young woman and Magwitch had a little child. A little child of whom Magwitch was exceedingly fond. On the very evening of the night that the object of her jealousy was found strangled, this young woman presented herself to Magwitch and swore she would destroy the child which was in her possession, and that he shall never see it again. And then vanished.
Did the woman keep her oath?
There comes the darkest part of Magwitch's life. She did.
That is, he says she did.
Why, of course, my dear boy, he says it all. I have no more information.
Herbert, can you see me?
By the firelight.
Look at me.
I do look at you, my dear boy. Touch me. I do touch you, my dear boy.
You're not afraid. that I am in any fever, or that my head is much disordered by the accident of last night.
Why, no. You are rather excited, but you are quite yourself.
I know I am quite myself. And the man we have in hiding down by the river is Estella's father. And I knew exactly what I was going to do.
I'm sorry, Pip, that we do nothing for you.
Miss Havisham was good enough to ask whether she could do nothing for me, and I told her no.
Everybody should know his own business best.
Every man's business is portable property.
I did ask something of Miss Havisham, however, sir. I asked her to give me some information relative to her adopted daughter, and she gave me all she possessed.
Did she? But she should know her own business best.
I know more of the history of Miss Havisham's adopted child than Miss Havisham does herself, sir. I know her mother.
Mother?
I have seen her mother within these past 3 days.
Yes.
And so have you, sir.
Yes.
And have still seen her more recently. Perhaps I know more of Estella's history than even you do, sir. I know her father, too.
So, you know the young lady's father, Pip?
Yes, and his name is Magwitch.
And on what evidence does Magwitch make this claim?
He does not make it, and has never made it, and has no knowledge or belief that his daughter is in existence.
What item was it you were at when Mr. Pip came in?
I will not submit to be thrown off this way. I want assurance of the truth from you. But if you ask me why I want it, I tell you, little as you care for such poor dreams, that I have loved Estella long and dearly, and that although I have lost her and must live a bereaved life, whatever concerned her was still nearer and dearer to me than anything else in the world. Wemmick, I know you to be a man with a gentle heart. I have seen your pleasant home and your old father, and all the innocent, cheerful, playful ways with which you refresh your business life, and I entreat you to say a word for me to Mr. Jaggers, and to represent to him that, all circumstances considered, he ought to be more open with me.
What's all this? You with an old father, and you with pleasant and playful ways?
Well, if I don't bring him here, what does it matter?
Pip, this man must be the most cunning impostor in all London.
Not a bit of it. I think you're another.
You with a pleasant home?
Well, since it don't interfere with business, let it be so. Now, I look at you, sir, and I wonder if you shouldn't be planning and contriving to have a pleasant home of your own one of these days, when you're tired of all this work.
Pip, we won't talk about poor dreams. You know more about such things than I, having much fresher experience of that kind. But now, as to this other matter. I've put a case to you. Mine, I admit nothing. But, Pip, put this case. Put the case that a woman, under such circumstances as you have mentioned, held her child concealed and was obliged to communicate the fact to her legal advisor. Put the case that at the same time he held a trust to find a child for an eccentric rich lady to adopt and bring up.
I follow you, sir.
Put the case that he lived in an atmosphere of evil. Put the case that he often saw children solemnly tried at a criminal bar where they were held up to be seen. Put the case that he habitually knew of their being imprisoned, whipped, transported, neglected, cast out, qualified in all ways for the hangman and growing up to be hanged. Spawn to grow into the fish that were to come to his net, to be prosecuted, defended, forsworn, made orphans.
I follow you, sir.
Put the case, Pip, that here was one pretty little child out of the heap who could be saved, whom the father believed dead and dared make no stir about, as to whom over the mother the legal advisor had this power: I know what you did and how you did it. You came so and so, this was your manner of attack and this the manner of resistance. I have tracked you through it all. Part with the child, unless it should be necessary to produce it to clear you, and then it shall be produced. Give the child into my hands, and I will do my best to bring you off. If you are saved, your child is saved too. If you are lost, your child is still saved. Put the case that this was done, and that the woman was cleared.
I understand you perfectly, sir.
But that I make no admission.
That you make no admissions.
No admissions.
Put the case that passion and the terror of death had a little shaken the woman's intellect, and that when she was set at liberty, she was frightened out of the ways of the world and went to him to be sheltered. Put the case that he took her in. Do you comprehend the imaginary case?
Quite.
Put the case that the secret was still a secret, except that you had got hold of it. Put that last case to yourself very carefully.
I do.
I asked Wemmick to put it to himself very carefully.
I do.
For whose sake would you reveal this secret? For the fathers? For the mothers? For the daughters? Add the case that you had loved her, Pip, and had made her the subject of those poor dreams which have, at one time or another, been in the heads of more men than you think likely. Then I tell you, it would be better to chop off that bandaged left hand of yours with your bandaged right hand, than pass the chopper on to Wemmick there to cut that off too, than to reveal this secret.
What are you all about? What are you constantly here for?
I ain't gonna do this, Wemmick!
You did? How dare you? You're not in a fit state to come here if you can't come here without spluttering like a bad pen. What do you mean by it?
A man can't help his feelings, Mr.
He is
Wemmick!
what? Say that again.
Now look here, my man. Get out of this office. I'll have no feelings here. Get out.
Get out.
So the unfortunate Mike very humbly withdrew, and Mr. Jaggers and Wemmick went to work again with an air of refreshment upon them as if they had just had lunch. From Little Britain, Pip went with the cheque in his pocket straight to Clarence's, and so Pip had the great satisfaction of concluding that arrangement.
It was the only good thing I had done, and the only completed thing I had done since I was first apprised of my great expectations.
We have now come to the month of March. On the Monday morning, Pip received the following letters by the post.
Walworth, burn this as soon as read. Early in the week, or say Wednesday, you might do what you know of if you felt disposed to try it. Now burn.
I then read, if you are not afraid to come to the old marshes tonight or tomorrow night at 9, and to come to the old house, and to come to the little sluice house by the lime kiln, you had better come. If you want information regarding your Uncle Magwitch, you had better come and tell no one and lose no time. You must come alone, unsigned. Is there anyone there? Is there anyone there?
Now I've got you.
Oh, what is this? Who is it? Help!
Now call out again and I'll make short work of you.
Ulrich, unbind me, let me go!
I'll let you go. I'll let you go to the moon. I'll let you go to the stars. All in good time.
What are you going to do to me?
I'm a-going to have your life. You was always in old Orlick's way since ever you was a child. You goes out of his way this present neat. More than that, you won't have none of you. You're dead. More than that, I won't have a rag, I won't have a bone of you left on earth. I'll put your body in the kiln now, nothing. Oh, you enemy. Old Orlick's are going to tell you something. I'll put your body in the kiln now, nothing. Afore I kill you, wolf, like any other beast, which is what I mean to do and what I have tied you up for, I'll have a good look at you and a good goad at you. Oh, you enemy, it was you as did for your shrew sister.
It was you, villain.
I tell you it was your doing. I tell you it was done through you. I come upon her from behind as I come upon you tonight. I give it her. I left her for dead. And if there had been a lime kiln as nigh her as there is now nigh you, she shouldn't have come to life again. But it weren't old Orlick as did it. It was you. You was favoured, and he was bullied and beat. Old Orlick bullied and beat, eh? Now you pays for it. You done it. Now you pays for it. I'll tell you something more, Wolf. I've looked after you to know your ins and outs. For, says old Orlick to himself, somehow or another I'll have him. What? When I looks for you, I finds your Uncle Magwitch, eh? What? You have an uncle too? Old Orlick come for to hear that your Uncle Magwitch had most like wore the leg iron. The burnt child dreads the fire. Old Orlick knowed you was burnt. Old Orlick knowed you was smuggling your Uncle Magwitch away. Old Orlick's a match for you, and knowed you'd come to neat. And now, Wolf, I'll tell you something more, and this ends it. There's them that's as good a match for your Uncle Magwitch as old Orlick has been for you. Let him wear them when he's lost his nevy. Let him wear them when he can't find a rag of his dear relation's clothes, nor yet a bone of his body. Get off me!
My dear boy. Herbert, pray heaven!
Softly, gently, my boy.
Don't be too eager. The time has not gone by, Herbert, has it?
The time has not gone by. It's still Monday night. You have all tomorrow, Tuesday to rest in.
Thank God.
What hurt have you got, my dear boy? Can you stand?
Yes, I can walk. Entreating Herbert to tell me how he had come to my rescue, I learned that I had, in my hurry, dropped the letter open in our chambers.
Well, I'd found it very soon after it had gone. Its tone made me very uneasy. And the rest, you can guess.
Our journey is now upon us. Wednesday morning was dawning when they looked out a window. The winking of the lights on the bridges were already turning pale, and the coming sun was like a marsh of fire on the horizon. The river, still dark and mysterious, was spanned by bridges turning coldly grey with here and there a touch from the burning sky. From Pip, a veil seemed to be drawn, and Pip felt strong and well.
Dear boy, faithful dear boy, thank you, well done. If you know, dear boy, what it is like to sit here, longer, my dear boy, you'd envy me.
If all goes well, you will be perfectly free and safe again within a few hours.
I hope so, dear boy.
And think so?
I suppose I think so, dear boy. We'd be puzzled to be more quiet and easygoing than we are at present. But it's a flowing so soft and quiet through the water, perhaps, as makes me think it, I was thinking just now that we can no more see to the bottom of the next few hours than we can see to the bottom of this river what I catches hold of. Nor yet we can no more hold their tide than I can hold this. And it's run through me fingers and gone, you see.
But for your face, I should think you were a little despondent.
Not a bit on it, dear boy. It comes a-flowing on so quiet. And of that there rippling at the boat's head, making a sort of a Sunday tune. Maybe I'm a-growing a trifle old, besides.
When, out of the mist, came a full-roared galley. She was nearing very fast, and the beating of her pedals grew louder and louder. The little boat felt as if she was almost upon her when the galley hailed.
You have a return transport there. His name is Abel Magwitch. I apprehend that man and call upon him to surrender and you to assist.
Still, in the same moment, you saw Pip's convict start up, lead across his captor, and pull the cloak from the neck of this man. Still, in the same moment, you saw that the face disclosed was the face of the other convict of long ago.
In the same moment, he saw the face tilt backward with a white terror on it that I shall never forget, and heard a loud cry, and felt the boat sink, and the convicts were gone.
Presently, a dark object was seen in the water. No man spoke. As it came nearer, it seemed to be Magwitch swimming, but not swimming freely. He had been mortally hurt from wounds in the head and chest.
As to Compeyson, I don't pretend to say what I might or might not have done to Compeyson.
And I took my place by Magwitch's side. I felt that that was my place henceforth while he lived. Why did you come home for my sake?
Dear boy, I'm quite content to take my chance. I've seen me boy, and he can be a gentleman without me.
I will never stir from your side, as long as I'm allowed to be near you. Please God, I will be as true to you as you have ever been to me.
He was taken to the police court, where he was immediately committed for trial. Magwitch lay in prison, very ill. He had broken 2 ribs, wounded one of his lungs. His breathing was very painful and difficult, and increased daily. He spoke very little.
But he was ever ready to listen to me, and he became the first duty of my life.
He wasted. It became weaker and worse, day by day. The trial was very short and very clear. It was impossible to try him and find him anything else but guilty. The judge's address. The appointed punishment for returning to the land that had cast you out being death. You must prepare yourself to die.
Me lad, I received me sentence of death from the Almighty, but I bow to yours.
Nobody was hard with him. There was duty to be done, and it was done, but not harshly. The number of days had fallen to 10.
Dear boy, I thought you was late, but I knowed you couldn't be that.
It was just the time. I waited for it at the gate.
Oh, dear boy, you always wait at the gates.
Yes, not to lose a moment of the time.
Ah, dear boy, thank you, dear boy. You've never deserted me.
And I could not forget that I had once meant to desert him.
What's best of all, you've grown more comfortable along with me since I was under a dark cloud than when the sun shone. That's best of all.
Are you in much pain today?
I don't complain of none, dear boy.
He had spoken his last words. Dear Magwitch, I must tell you, now at last, you understand what I'm saying. A gentle pressure on my hand. You had a child once, whom you loved and lost. A stronger pressure on my hand. She lived and found powerful friends. She is living now. She is a lady and very beautiful, and I love her. With a last faint effort, he raised my hand to his lips. Then he gently let it sink upon his breast, with his own hand lying on it, and his head dropped quietly. I returned home. For a day or two, I lay on the sofa, or on the floor, anywhere, according as I happened to sink down with a heavy head and aching limbs, and no purpose and no power. Then there came one night which appeared of great duration. I had a fever. I suffered greatly. I often lost my reason. The time seemed interminable. I confounded impossible existences within my own identity. I was a brick in a house wall, and yet entreating to be released from the giddy place where the builders had set me. I was a steel beam of a vast engine, clashing and whirling over a gulf. I implored in my own person to have the engine stopped and my part in it hammered off. I passed through these phases of disease I know of my own remembrance, and did in some sort know at the time. I often saw faces of real people in the belief that they were murderers, and I would all at once comprehend that they meant to do me good, and would then sink exhausted into their arms and suffer them to lay me down. I also knew at the time. But above all, there was a constant tendency in all these people who, when I was very ill, would present extraordinary transformations of the human face, and would be much dilated in size. Above all, I say, I knew that there was an extraordinary tendency in all these people to settle down into the likeness of Joe.
Which it are, Pip, old chap.
What remained for me but to visit the dear old forge, and there to have out my disclosure to him, and there to relieve my mind and heart. Biddy! I wept to see her.
Oh, wept to see him.
Aye, because she looked so fresh and pleasant.
Ah, because you look so worn and white.
But dear Biddy, how smart you are!
Yes, dear Pip.
And dear Joe, how smart you are!
Yes, dear old Pip, old chap.
It's my wedding day, and I'm married to Joe.
Dear Biddy, you have the best husband in the whole world. But no, you couldn't love him more than you do.
No, I couldn't indeed.
And dear Joe, you have the best wife in the whole world. And she will make you as happy as even you deserve to be, you dear, good, noble Joe. And Joe and Biddy both receive my humble thanks for all you have done for me, and all I have so ill repaid.
Say no more.
But I must say more. Joe, I hope that you have children to love, and that some little fellow will sit in the chimney corner on a winter night who might remind you of another little fellow gone out of it forever. Don't tell him, Joe, that I was thankless. Don't tell him, Biddy, that I was ungenerous and unjust. Only tell him that I honored you both, because you were both so good and true to me, and that, as your child, I said it would be natural for him to grow up a much better man than I did.
I ain't gonna say nothing of that nature, Pip. Nor Biddy ain't. Nor yet nobody ain't.
And Joe and Biddy both, though I know you've already done it in your own kind hearts, pray tell me that you forgive me.
Oh, dear old Pip, old chap. God knows I'll forgive you, if I have anything to forgive.
Amen. God knows I do.
Joe and Biddy, goodbye.
And he went out and joined Herbert. Within a month he had quitted England. Within 2 months he was clerk to Clarriker and Company. And within 4 months he had assumed his first undivided responsibility. Many a year went round before Pip was partner in the house with Herbert, but he lived frugally and lived happily and paid his debts and maintained a constant correspondence with Biddy and Joe. They were not in a grand way of business, but had a good name and worked for their profits and did very well.
We owed so much to Herbert's ever cheerful industry and readiness that I often wondered how I had conceived that old idea of his inaptitude, until I was one day enlightened by the reflection that perhaps the inaptitude had not been in him at all, but had been in me.
For 11 years, Pip had not seen Joe nor Biddy with his eyes, when, upon a December evening, an hour or two after dark, he laid his hand softly on the old kitchen door.
There was Joe, and there, fenced into the corner of Joe's arm, was I again.
We gave him the name of Pip, for your sake, old chap. And we hope he grow a little bit like you. And we think he do.
I think he does too. Biddy, you must give Pip to me one of these days, or lend him at all events.
No, you must marry.
So Herbert and his Clara say, but I don't think I shall, Biddy. I am already quite an old bachelor.
Tell me, dear Pip, you are sure you don't still fret for her?
Oh, no, Biddy, I think not.
And tell me, as an old friend, have you quite forgotten her?
My dear Biddy, I have forgotten nothing in this life that ever had a place there, but that poor dream, as I once used to call it, has all gone by, Biddy. All gone by.
You may have heard of Estella as leading a most unhappy life, and as being separated from her husband, who used her with great cruelty, and who had become quite renowned as a compound of pride, avarice, brutality, and meanness.
And I had heard, which is proof of a higher judge and jury, of the death of her husband, from an accident consequent on his ill treatment of a horse.
This release had befallen her some 2 years before. For anything I knew, she was married again. Nevertheless, I knew that while I said those words, I secretly intended to revisit the site of the old house. That night, alone, for her sake. Yes, even so, for Estella's sake. Estella.
I wonder you know me. I am greatly changed.
What I had never seen before was the sad and softened light of the once proud eyes. What I had never felt before was the friendly touch of the once insensible hand. After so many years, it is strange that we should meet where our first meeting was. Do you often come back?
I have never been here since.
Nor I. I have often thought and intended of coming back, but was prevented by many circumstances. Poor old place.
Were you wondering as you walked along how it came to be left in this condition?
Yes, Estella.
The grounds belong to me. It is the only possession I have not relinquished. Everything else has gone from me, little by little. But I have kept this. It was the subject of the only determined resistance I made in all the wretched years.
Is it to be built on?
At last it is. I came to take leave of it before its change. And you live abroad still.
Still.
And do well, I am sure.
I work pretty hard for a sufficient living, and therefore, yes, I do well.
I have often thought of you.
Have you?
Of late, very often. There was a long, hard time when I kept far from me the remembrance of what I had thrown away when I was quite ignorant of its worth. But since then I have given it a place in my heart.
You have always held your place in mine.
I little thought I should take leave of you again. In taking leave of this spot, I am glad to do so.
Glad to part again, Stella. To me, parting is a painful thing. To me, the remembrance of our last parting was ever mournful and painful.
But you said to me, God bless you and God forgive you. And if you could say that to me then you will not hesitate to say it to me now. Now when suffering has been stronger than all teaching and has taught me to understand what your heart used to be. I have been bent and broken, but I hope into a better shape. Be as considerate and good to me as you were and tell me we are friends.
We are friends.
And will continue friends apart.
I took her hands in mine, and we went out of the ruined place. And as the morning mists had risen long ago, so the evening mists were rising now, and in all the broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me, I saw no shadow of another parting from her.
The end.
Of great expectations.